minutes from our meeting of November 6th. I will entertain a motion. Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in agreement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those against, like sign. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. All right. Let's see. First thing we're going to look at is review of the street projects.
And the way this, Chairman, the way we're going to work this over the next couple of weeks is that David and David will be going over the project listing. It may be, you may go through it fast. It may take more meetings, et cetera, or you may speed through and understand and move on to the next one. There's pictures. David and David have got pictures for all these projects. And if you have any questions after the meeting, tomorrow, next day, just give Jennifer or myself an email, and we can get those answers back to you or the rest of the staff. I don't know who all's on the chain, on the email chain, but you can send that to us, and we'll work that into it. One item I did want to tell you about, I think Kristen asked for some values before and after a project. I have not got those completed, and so we will have those at the next meeting. And actually, I'll send them out prior to the meeting.
That's good.
You should be working this book most likely for the next 2 weeks. As we proceed into other projects like drainage, parks, et cetera, we'll add different packets. We'll bring you a packet where you put it in your notebook at those times. Any questions on that?
None at all.
Turn it over to staff.
So David, or David want to go first?
David's gonna go.
Well, I just wanted to touch on the information that you've got. The first page is a priority listing of projects that staff put together. This is our first cut at putting our, at least from a staff perspective, what our priority would be for street projects in the bond package. Obviously with number 1 being the highest priority, and then working down, you'll notice that there's a highlighted, number 13 is highlighted. You may recall, maybe it was the last meeting or maybe the meeting before, Donna Barron explained that at least for right now, we're going to assume that the streets package might be somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 million. Obviously, as we get further into this process, that may change a little bit. But what we did is basically showed you, when you go down the priority listing, about as far down as you can get, and be as close to that $60 million as we could possibly get. Donna also asked us to put together a total of about $100 million of street projects in the event that maybe there were some other projects that you would want to consider and maybe exchange maybe some other project for something that maybe staff had ranked higher. That's up to you. So we'll be going through all the projects in priority order, and this line is basically what we think we're going to end up with in terms of a budget for street projects, although it's, again, could change. And then we've provided a little over $100 million to consider. And you've got this information in your packet. For each project, you've got a data sheet that looks like this. It's pretty self-explanatory, but just very quickly, explain, project, the location, a very brief description of the project. There's a section that explains how each project meets or relates to a citywide priority or strategy. The next section explains how the project relates to the 2025 plan and the big moves. And then the section after that gets into somehow this one got, well, I guess it's there. The next section, some of the projects don't have a specific timeline. Some of them do. And so you'll see that information there. You know, whether the project is high, medium, or low priority, and then the cost breakdown. And you'll see, you know, it's kind of broken up into, at least at this point, very roughly what we think is gonna cost for street right-of-way, you know, engineering design, actual street construction, drainage construction, and then the total, and then the spreadsheet automatically adds in 3% for 10 years of inflation, because we don't know how when these projects will be bid.
David, would you remind everybody about the utilities?
Oh, yes.
What you gonna ask?
We specifically took utility costs out of the projects. Almost, not everyone, but almost every one of these street projects does have utility costs associated with it. We specifically took those out of these spreadsheets. So when you see these numbers, these totals, they do not include utilities, and that's simply because of the different funding mechanism and the fact that those funds don't have to go to the voters.
But the drainage is still there.
Yeah, for now. I mean, if we had a drainage utility and we were using revenue bonds for drainage, then that would be a different story, but at least at this point, we're not.
Okay.
And you'll have a larger package of specific drainage projects that will look at a funding source possibly over with a stormwater fee.
Okay.
Okay, the drainage
Okay.
here is simply tied to the
road
roadway
itself.
itself. Okay.
So, anyway, and you've got one of these sheets for every project that was on that priority listing.
And behind those sheets, you have a map that shows each project
Yes,
that
thank
you can
you.
reference back to.
David, what does the dotted line mean? Solid or dotted line? So I'm assuming dotted line's the actual construction.
On Calvin, I mean corporate.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Some of the line on corporate is dotted.
Oh, it's just different, it just shows the different segments of, corporate drive is basically broken up into multiple segments. What we're talking about on corporate drive, and we'll get, you know, obviously this is probably a good time to mention that because it's the number one ranked project, at least from a staff perspective. Corporate drive is basically funded in segments. Segment 1 has already been completed. We talked about that at the last meeting. Segment 2, 3, 4, and 5 are actually on the table for this consideration in this bond package that we're considering this evening. So that's what the different textures or the different,
And let me,
it just breaks up the segments.
David, let me interject something here. Remember, corporate drive has been funded by another source, so the majority of the funding is through RTR money, original total revenue money through COG. This is our match component of this. So this $7 million is strictly a match. That it's construction dollars, but it is a match. And David will show you that.
Yeah, it's explained here in the description. It's basically the road is 80% funded by the regional toll revenue funding. And then the city and Denton County have entered into an interlocal agreement to split the 20% cost for the match. We don't have the match money budgeted, so that's why we're listing corporate drive as the number one priority, because we're actually getting ready to award a professional services agreement for an engineer to start the design. So and we've only have so much time to use the RTR funding before it goes away, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
So,
And what time frame is that?
and that, yeah, and you'll see down here in the time, this is one of the projects where we put a specific time frame.
2019.
2019.
2019 is when we have to have the money, at least, the money has to be at least encumbered by 2019. And it's a pretty large project, so it's gonna take, you'll see the timeline, it's gonna take, we're estimating probably 30 months to design, and at least another 30 months to construct it.
David, the 7.5 million, or Steve, that's part of that 20% match? Of that 20%, is it split even? Is it 10% Denton County, 10% Lewisville?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the way our agreements with Denton County typically work is that we have to front the money and then ask for reimbursement. So we always have to fund the entire amount up front, and then they'll reimburse us. So,
So that 7.5, is that 20%?
yes,
Okay. And then theoretically, we'll get back 3.75 million.
yeah,
That'll come back into, okay.
correct.
Where would that go to?
Okay.
Back into a fund?
It would go back into more street projects.
Yeah.
And you gotta look at it too, you've got a 3% escalator for 10 years, like David was talking about a while ago. If you do the first 2 or 3 projects in year 1, 2, and 3, you don't have that escalation, but it's built into these numbers.
Yep.
That excess then goes back to maybe we can drop a street, and get another street in on that layer, on that priority listing, so, and bids. If we get a good bid, and we spend that, then we put that money back in. That's the way we did 2003 bond. We were able to do more streets because of one, escalators, but also the second one was we got good pricing on a lot of those projects.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, makes sense.
That's a great comment. I think it's important to note that 7.5, so we're fronting the full 20% and then the 10% will come back.
yeah, 10% or half of that 7.5 will come back from Denton County, and then that money can be applied to additional street projects.
And Ray, one other thing that I need to make mention to the group is when we award a project under state law and our rules, is that we must have the entire funding for that project. We can't partially fund a bid to a contractor if he's not 100% funded. So that's another reason that you have to put this entire amount in there, because it's a reimbursable grant and we won't get it back till 2019.
Well, yeah, I mean, the project will be finished before we get all the money back, so, and in the meantime, we have to pay the contractor.
Okay.
Get the maps, did we? That's all right. We can go to the, yeah, there's a,
Their appointments are sacred.
you'll see, corporate drive again is shown on the screen. It's basically a 4-lane divided thoroughfare. And we don't have any photos of it, obviously, because it's just bare land right now. There's no road out there, so. This
So
is
they
probably,
will cut across, I'm trying to vision it, it's below.
yeah, right now, this is the segment we built in the last bond program, this short segment between Waters Ridge and Railroad Street.
Yeah. So the
And this
park is right
extends it all the way into Carrollton.
there you go. Okay, so it goes around the
Landfill.
landfill.
Yeah, the Farmers Branch landfill is down here.
Waste Management built the embankment from Railroad Street to the river up to the north. That was an agreement we had with them 10 years ago, that they dedicated the property and then built the embankment, because this is all in the floodplain, floodway areas, and then they actually put that in. So that expense is not even in here, that's already been paid for. by Waste Management as a
Okay.
donation.
Sorry for all these questions, but, is there any risk in the future, 5, 10, 15 years from now with a landfill, or has that been evaluated, and corporate, right, we were to go north of the landfill? Just out of curiosity, I mean, who knows what could happen to landfill in the future?
The landfills are a permitted site.
They are.
They have a field permit site, and then their boundaries are buffer or their excavated area. The Waste Management landfill has approximately 300 acres. That is the landfill site only. And that's basically this tract, this heavy gray, I don't know if you can see that. This is the permitted landfill site. They own this, this, and this. And this is their borrow area. This is where they dig the dirt, et cetera. And so these will become lakes, like you have all the lakes on the park side. You'll have a series of lakes on this side down through this area. This will not be filled as far as what we have permitted now, and they don't have the intent to permit to fill this simply because they don't have the dirt to cover. They're using the dirt here to cover this. Same way with Farmers Branch. This is the Farmers Branch landfill. This area in white is part of the Farmers Branch landfill, but it's part of the buffer. Corporate Drive will run along this north section, as we have it there. And this, though, will be a buffer. It will not be landfill. The landfill cannot move beyond this gray line here. That answer your question?
Sure did.
And again, just to kind of drive home that priority, this is roughly, in today's cost, a $29 million road. And as it stands now, you know, with the county funding, when it's all said and done, the city would have in today's dollars roughly $3.5 million in it. So it's a pretty big bang for the buck in terms of city funding. And so we hate for that to go away, so.
Now, I wasn't here for that part. What, is that 2-lane, 4-lane?
4 lanes with a median. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, you'll see a description. You can follow along. There's one of these sheets for every project.
So I get to come in like,
The next project is South Healy.
Before you move on.
Oh, okay, sure.
Before you move on, looking at where corporate is there, it shows like a little Valley Ridge pie. Is that a part of this project?
No, this is a separate project, and I think it's listed as, it's listed down, it's actually listed, I think, as number 20.
and that's the animal shelter.
Yeah, this is right by where the animal shelter is. Again, you know, this is a project that different people have different opinions about. But you know, at least from a first cut, staff ranked it number 20 with regard to all these projects. You know, this committee may choose to rank it higher, but at least for now, it is a separate project. And
Okay.
South Keeley is a street that you'll notice that we've got a total in the, if you look at your overall priority spreadsheet, we've only got roughly $463,000 budgeted for South Keeley, and that goes all the way from East Main down to where it ties into Mill. Now, this is another one of those projects where this is intended to be match money. To make a long story short, at one point we had some funding that was set up with Denton County that for various reasons went away, and we're in the process of trying to obtain some additional funding through the COG to replace that county funding that we no longer have. And so the $463,000 in plus is basically the money in excess of the money that we would expect to get from the COG to complete this project. And it would basically be a 2-lane, 37-foot wide collector street with curbs and gutters, concrete, improved drainage, probably some sidewalks.
Where's it at again? Right there on the left.
There you go,
Finger,
right
there we
there.
go.
Behind
And
CCA.
link to pictures.
Is that happening?
All right, did I understand you to say it was in addition to that 1.5 million that you're trying to
Yes.
recapture?
Yeah, we've got 1.5 million that we're trying to get from the COG. We think we're gonna be successful in getting that, we just don't have it yet.
All right.
And so this 463,000 is in addition to that, to finish the project.
Each of the each county match or state match, or, I'm sorry, any county donation or grant or whatever you wanna call it, has generally a match of some sort, either a 20, 25% match. These are generally 20. Is that right, David? This one's a
Yes.
20?
Well, this one was actually when we had the original county funding, it was a full, they were gonna fund the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
But of course, over
Yeah.
time with inflation and such, it,
David, what would happen if we gave approval and took it to vote, council agreed to it, give you the 463 that you need, but then you don't get that 1.5, because you said it's still pending, right?
yeah, basically this list of projects is a mean to an end. I mean, as we explained, when we get to the actual, the actual ballot, we'll just basically have a dollar amount, and then it's gonna be for street projects. So that, the city is not tied into building specific street projects should something happen that we don't anticipate.
So if we didn't get the funding, it could go to another priority.
Yeah, then we can move it on. So if that
That's where some of
happened,
your inflation dollars might come back to help you out.
if that happened and for some strange reason we didn't get that funding, we would move this $463, down the list and try to cover something else. But you can see, I mean, it's obviously a substandard street.
And go back to one item, on the 2003 bond, I think we mentioned, one of the meetings, where we sold the bonds, we had like one for Fox Avenue. We didn't know that the DCTA ELAP funds were gonna come into play. So we had 2 or 3 million set aside in that bond issue for that particular item. We got that money from DCTA. We were able to go do another neighborhood in the street projects. That's why you do not specifically list streets in your bond proposal. You list them as street and drainage projects.
Well, and then the same thing with the Westwood neighborhood. The Westwood neighborhood was built at a time when we were getting a lot better bids than we are now. And the bids came in extremely well, and we were actually able to save enough money that we were able to turn around and do the Bel Air Heights neighborhood, even though that was not listed in the, in the original list of streets.
I turned on that street one day to see a geyser going up.
No, we saw, so this project ends at Main Street?
Yes. Yeah, because north of Main Street, it's basically curbed and guttered already, and
David, another just a little crazy question. I'm assuming this is the street that's just north of City Hall, right? Just north of us, right here?
no, it's
No, it's
actually,
south.
No, this goes
That's
south.
Royal Affairs on the left,
Here you go.
that building.
Oh, okay.
We're looking north.
That's north there.
Gotcha. Oh, I see, yep.
CCA and then,
Tierney,
Sonic.
Okay.
You take the backside of Sonic and the fence and CCA.
Okay.
Tierney's Restaurant is the
Right in the
on the
back.
right,
Yep.
up there on that
You wanna
building.
go back?
I mean.
I've got it now, I won't ask the questions.
No, that's what this is for, is to ask questions, see, make sure you got everything you need.
My point was, I thought that was a North Street, and if it was, during the Western Day, the citizens put up all those, you can't park here signs.
Yeah, that's the other side.
So I was thinking, if we redid the road, spent money, would it be available to park on that street?
You talking about the white square, no parking sign?
Yeah.
Actually, we do those.
Okay.
To keep because the street's so narrow and
Yep.
cars line both sides, and that's a detour route,
Yeah, it
it
is,
begins to stop traffic, so we post that.
Okay.
I think there are some residents further down who may do some of
I
their
think
own
they
as
do,
well.
yeah.
The other side is to keep, where we can get emergency vehicles.
Exactly, that would be, that's,
Yeah.
The street's so narrow and then cars park, we learned that the hard way when we had a traffic jam. So
Oh, no, I agree
We try
with
to
that.
keep the road open, but.
Yeah, I agree. I
and
thought
you have
that-
happier residents at that point.
Yeah,
I
you can
know
see the
people that
street
live in
there.
that area, so I know what they put up with.
City Hall where we're at is right here, and this is just to the south and east
Yep.
running.
The way it taps into Mill Street,
Well, and
corner
that,
has
I think
always
that's still a
bothered me,
little
is
bit
there-
open. I mean, obviously we'll work through those issues. There's even some talk and that maybe someday Keely would become a couplet with Mill Street, similar to the way we have Church in Maine right now. So, if we decide to do that, obviously that connection will be different than if we leave them both two-way streets. And I don't know, well, we haven't made that decision yet. There has, so, until we get to actual hard design and
Okay.
that could happen several different ways. Anyway, just running through some of the pictures, just basically indicate that it's obviously not in good shape. I'll also mention that we actually have in design right now a new water line that's supposed to go down Keely Avenue, a new 12-inch water line. So, we're hoping, and again, that's part of the reason why we've ranked this number 2 is we're gonna be tearing this street up again with some water line construction in the near future. Number 2, it supports our big move, the Old Town big move. And of course, we're expecting to get COG funding to build the majority of the street. We didn't want to spend a lot of time on the pictures, just kind of flip through them real quick just to give you a visual and some idea of the conditions and.
Must have been where that geyser was, that cutout.
We've had a few of those.
I thought we'd put a new fountain in Old Town for a while.
Number 3 is the Timberbrook neighborhood. And I'm gonna turn this project over to David. He's a little bit more familiar with what's going on out there than I am.
Timberbrook is a large residential neighborhood south of Bel Air and east of Edmonds Lane. It started construction in the very early 70s and then through the mid and into the late 70s. So this neighborhood is over 40 years old.
What is the Southwest Parkway's over to the right?
Correct. Yes, right here.
Okay.
This is Fox Creek comes through here. Live Oak is a street to the east, and then Walnut and Metal Arch are the borders to the south.
And the trail comes through there,
Yes.
correct?
Trail comes down through here and comes in by an alley, I believe, and then goes south, if I'm not mistaken. And unfortunately, the pavement, the street, the sidewalk, the alleys are all in bad condition. The water line is in horrible condition. Storm drain system is in bad condition. I think historically, we've had some drainage issues over there, Steve, that have been addressed through 2 or 3 different means, just as a stopgap measure to provide drainage. So
We actually
David,
purchased 2 houses that were flooded back in early 2000
Yep.
that we had to purchase.
so there's a lot of things that need correcting, and we identified this project several years ago, and David's staff even did some preliminary cost estimates. But this is such a big project, we never had funding to do it, but it quickly worked up to the top of this list because it's something we have to do. Quickly, I've got a lot of pictures of this, and I'll run through them.
And the neighborhood to the north of that has been done, or is being finished up now?
Yes,
Madison and all of those?
that's correct.
There is one project that we're working on currently, again with some monies. Actually, this is from the utility fund monies. There were 3 streets that were not completed over there. Went through those last week. David, I can't remember.
Madison's one of them, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, Madison's one, there's 3, Madison, Foxwood,
And there's a cul-de-sac. So
yeah, and there's
Kimber
one
Court.
cul-de-sac.
Yeah, Kimber Court does.
we're in the process of finishing that one up probably the next year.
And it's the same age pretty much as this neighborhood.
But the rest of Village was done a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago.
And that Foxwood has geysers quite often too, so
Yeah.
it'll be static when that one is done. You see there's no curb ramps here. This was put in before we have curb ramps. There's a valve on the water line. It's got 70 stenciled in the top of it. I'm assuming that's the year that cap was made. Probably installed shortly thereafter. And if you look at the concrete, this is a concrete street around it. It's just old and worn.
And it'll be replaced with concrete street, right?
Yes. The sidewalks are in poor condition.
Those trees.
Yep. Trees love sidewalks.
Yes.
I walked up into an alley and this is what I found. There's a lake here, just shattered pavement. I thought that was interesting. The paving had flexed and the dowel bar just broke through the top of the paving.
That's a tire accident waiting to happen.
Actually, it's just below it, but it's not good. Another water valve. I'd never seen a year in the top of a water valve stack. There's a sanitary sewer manhole that's actually become a pothole because it's now lower than the street. Here's a manhole. This entire street is just fractured around it.
That's been a patch and a patch. We saw it out, patch it again.
There's a lot of unusual drainage in this development that I think will be addressed to the degree possible in the new design. You've got open drainage channels between houses, so the water runs into the alley and then goes into a storm drain system.
Now, was that put in by the developer?
That's the way it was built when it was constructed.
And of course, our ordinances wouldn't allow that today if they were gonna build this subdivision, but of course, back in the 70s, that was pretty common.
And we also have issues of sewer lines that run between houses. Even though we have an easement, it's very difficult to get in there and work. And if you ever have a problem, it can be a real nightmare for us and the people that live there.
And the broken curb at the bottom?
David, going back to the drainage, not to jump ahead with drainage, when we start talking about that, but is there a section, or is there a priority of drainage, of this neighborhood and drainage with additional funding?
This type of drainage is just an extension of the street.
Okay, so
It's not
it's
a,
all covered
Yes.
here, okay.
Yes.
Your drainage areas, when you get to that point, are mainly creeks, streams, large borrow ditches, et cetera.
Okay.
If it links to the street in any way possible, we include it into the street project.
Perfect, okay.
Generally, I'm not saying that's 100% of the time, but that's the intent.
I guess just kind of keep us up to speed if there's something that correlates with another funding, another project.
Will you have to take those trees down that's uprooting the sidewalks?
That's a sensitive subject on every front.
Okay.
And I have 2 opinions. I love a tree-lined street, and I also have to repair sidewalks. So I'm torn on this subject, so I'll let David talk to that.
Well, and actually, the last couple of subdivisions we've done, we've attempted to save the trees with limited success. It just really depends on the variety of tree, the size of the tree. In some instances, because of the drainage, we have to change the grade of the street, and if you have to cut the grade of the street down, then you get into the root system of the tree, and then it's
Well, I was gonna ask, cause basically, will it be the city's cost to take those trees down? Or will
What
it be
we've
the
been-
homeowner?
What we've been doing, on the last two subdivisions we've done, we've, agreed with the homeowners, that we would leave the trees wherever we could. And if the tree died within 24 months after construction, the city would come back and remove those. If it died after that 24-month period, then it was up to the homeowner to have that removed.
Okay.
And even then, that often falls back to us. If the homeowner's unable to and it becomes a hazard in the right of way, we may ultimately have to deal with it.
Or the homeowner may just say, go ahead and get rid of the tree. I don't want to have that perceived.
Well, yeah, and we've had that happen, where, you know, the contractor will actually be out there working and we're out there trying to save the tree and the homeowner says, you know what, just take it out, I don't want it.
Okay. And will that cost be in these costs here, when you do take the trees down that?
Well,
on the
that's a
street?
relatively small cost
Okay.
relative
Yes,
to the
it would.
entire
Okay.
project, so we just absorb that if
Okay.
it happens.
Here's some asphalt patching we've done over failures. Here's a curb. The entire back of the curb is just flaked away. I've never seen anything quite like that before.
Bob, when I
Here's another thing I'd never seen to
Jumping on
this
your
extent.
skateboard
I took this under the shadow of a car, that's why the shadow's there. But the street has chalked away to the point that entire rocks are exposed. I mean, that's half and 1 inch deep. Beg your pardon?
Just goodness, I mean.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything quite like that.
David, how many total residents are in here? Any chance you know that number off the top of your head?
So not off the top of my head, when we get back to the map, you can look at the houses.
There's quite a few houses back
Yeah.
there.
You can see.
It's one of the largest
Figured-
single
Yeah, the numbers,
subdivisions.
somebody have to count them here.
This was a bad situation. The standing water here and a lot of dirt. The next slide will show you where that dirt's coming from. There's a
Okay.
cross tie retaining wall along this sidewalk. It's obviously in disrepair, and that rain's just washing it out.
And when we do these subdivisions, we go back in and we replace those retaining walls with either concrete or sometimes the modular block.
They're on the west side, there are a few curb ramps, but they're not compliant. I don't know when these went in, but they're not compliant with today's standard.
And when you drive, if you do go out and drive this area, you'll see the street looks okay, and then you see the next street that's like the pictures. And so, there's not many of the first ones I described, but they are there. So you look at, well, this doesn't look too bad. But then again, remember the neighborhood approach. Remember that issue, you fixed my street when, you fixed his when you fixed mine.
And also, when you're doing 25 and driving, and you're looking up, you don't see a lot of these little things. That's why I think taking the pictures help, because it puts your focus down on the street, and you'll see things that you'll drive over every day and never look at until you feel them one day.
Well, and then the other issue is that, and you'll see this when we get to the map that shows all the water main breaks. You know, what we really hate to do is go into a neighborhood and fix utilities and then not do the pavement. So, and you'll see that the utility breaks are pretty widespread.
And we've had 61 water main breaks in that subdivision.
Just because it's older?
The type of pipe and the age of pipe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's since 1998,
The subdivision's held?
early 70s. We're to the point on Holly Oak where I consider it almost critical. We're afraid to flush a fire hydrant on that street. And that becomes an issue when you have those conditions.
And again, your priority ranking is how fast those get completed. For example, if this ranking were to fall, say down at the end, it's still funded, but down on the 10-year level, I can't wait and not put a water line in there for health, safety, and welfare issues. So we try to prioritize these, again, not only street conditions, but the utility conditions as well.
I don't want this one to take it.
I think Steve's gonna talk on this one.
No.
Yeah, this one's ranked number 4. It's Keeley, Jones, and Cowan. This is the very north end of Keeley, north of the service, the city service center, Jones Street, and then Cowan Avenue, north of the railroad tracks. We spoke briefly about this at our last meeting. This was something that we agreed with the neighborhood out here on Cowan Avenue to do, to provide better access in and out of the neighborhood in exchange for, I guess, our having to close the rail crossing at Cowan Avenue.
Okay, this is the area with you have to work with the school buses and all of that to make the access.
Exactly. There's
We're still working with the school bus issue. I saw one yesterday parking on the road. Yeah, where you're supposed to turn in.
Yeah, we're working right now. We've got a contract with an engineer, and we're working on the design of this little piece of Jones Street right now, so we can get that piece finished before we build Valley Ridge. But obviously, the rest of this is a fairly large project, and so it's going to have to wait for this bond program. And we've got it ranked number 4 again because this neighborhood here is going to lose its access on the south end when the rail crossing goes away. And so we agreed that we would endeavor to provide better access from the north and build these streets.
I don't have any pictures of those.
Okay, oh, you did, okay.
You can go to the street view if you'd like. Actually, that's the wrong section of county.
Oh, okay, never mind. Well, anyway, we don't have pictures of that, but all of these streets right now, they have no curb and gutter. They're asphalt. They're relatively narrow. And the funding proposed would build all of these streets 37 feet wide with curb and gutter. They'd be concrete. Basically, it'd be an appropriate street for the type of mixture of traffic we have out here. It's kind of a mixture. There's some residential and also some industrial properties out here and some commercial. So that's the type of street it would be.
And putting curb and gutter on Cowan Street, north of where the cul-de-sac's gonna be. Currently, as David said, this is a asphalt road, no curb, gutter. So you have vehicles parking on that side of the roadway in the ditch. There is some issues there with cleanup. By putting a curb and gutter on this street, you basically eliminate that parkway parking, so to speak, and clean that area up. There you go. That's what you have right now.
There's no defined shoulder here because of the way the vehicles drive and park. It's very rough.
And some of the some of the businesses along there like this have lots of vehicles parked by. So,
Created their own parking lot out of the,
Correct.
yep.
When you redo streets, is the only option is to do them in concrete now?
If it's a high traffic area, if it's a super low traffic area, then probably the first thing would be to do asphalt, because you're not gonna have much wear and tear.
Yes, and if you're doing a large project, a large street, and with a large investment, you would want to go with concrete. We still do asphalt overlays in our maintenance operation on smaller streets that don't have as much traffic. And there will probably be a transition over time, or eventually, of all streets to concrete. But we can't afford to do them all at one time.
What will happen when we do, if we funded this and if the voters funded this and we did the curb where those businesses are parking right now?
They have on-site parking. There's a
Can you
lot
go
of
back to
aren't
that other
using
one?
it.
yeah, turn yourself around. Yeah.
Just turn it all the way around.
Well, the other thing too, you'll have to remember, this will be a 37-foot wide street.
On the
So
right.
it'll be wide enough to actually park cars in the street and still have 2 traffic lanes.
But currently, some of those they have parking in their area, but it's easier to park on the roadway, and those truck parking that you saw, that white truck there,
Yep.
have a big yard, they just don't park in it. They're in and out of that truck daily, so they leave it out there. That's an enforcement issue, but we're kind of working the enforcement right now, working with the people and trying to get this all resolved.
But with those vehicles parked there, it also makes it's sort of a safety issue when people coming out of the side street.
Sure.
I had one guy pull out, when I was on my way to household hazardous waste one morning, the guy just came right out in front of me without even stopping because he couldn't see, so.
David, you might mention what streets that we're going to pave internally, Crescent and Morningside, show where that is. So this entire area will have new streets.
We're going to pave Crescent here from Cowan to Jones, and also Morningside from Crescent to Cowan. That'll be done with an asphalt overlay.
That's a project, that's not part of when the project's gonna be.
No, that's funded in our maintenance operation.
That's that 4 million I was talking about we do in annual, plus part of this is CDBG, right?
Yes, the Morningside is residential, and the CDVG committee funded that. We'll be doing the Crescent Avenue portion. It'll all be done at one time. And that should happen within the next 3 to 4 months. All goes as expected.
Unless it snows on Sunday.
And one other thing I might mention, you talked about asphalt streets going to concrete. The city council recently directed staff on the last projects of the 2003 bond and some excess money we had there. Northwest Old Town, there, here, northeast Old Town, across Mill Street, portion of, there's another set of, Mackenzie Hembry.
Yes.
Has council directed us to move to concrete on those. Same way with North Mill Street to a certain point. We mentioned that down to Forest Park or whatever the name, it's Forest Street, goes to concrete at that point, and then asphalt where we go up to less traffic areas.
And you may recall at the last meeting, I also mentioned that back about that same time, when council was deciding whether to do concrete or asphalt, we hired a engineering consultant to do a report for us, taking a look at the cost of asphalt versus concrete over time, and even though asphalt is roughly 20% less expensive in general up front, over the course of 30 years, when you consider the additional maintenance that's involved, in the long term, it really ends up costing you in the neighborhood of 20 to 30% more than concrete.
Now, there are some streets that really just need to be asphalt, low traffic, so I don't see all streets going to asphalt, to concrete, but the trend is right now with council direction is moved toward concrete.
Yeah, I was just asking, cause like say if the lower priority street projects could get asphalt, that way we could get more projects in, but if like say all on this 1 through 22 need to be concrete, then I understand, but say if you have a list from 1 to 50, 40 through 50, can it be asphalt, to get more projects in for less money? But I understand your point, over a life of 30 years, it still may cost more.
And you also, all of these streets, or most of them, are concrete already.
Okay.
You don't want to take a concrete street and convert it to asphalt.
Yeah, you wanna go to
And that's sort of what we did with the last bond program. When we did our last bond sale, the street projects that Steve just mentioned, there wasn't quite enough money to do that entire North Mill area in concrete. And so, the council did decide that it was acceptable to go ahead and use asphalt for the residential streets that had less traffic.
And in the floodway.
Yeah, well, and there were some drainage issues as well that prompted that, but that was part of the thought there was, we just had a little bit of money left over and there wasn't quite enough money to do the entire neighborhood, so that was a way to get the entire neighborhood done. But it was simply because it was at the very tail end of our bond program.
May I ask, what kind of warranty, for lack of a better word, comes when we have a concrete street built and we awarded the bid? What do we expect from that?
The only warranty we get is a 2-year maintenance bond. Basically, if any material or workmanship issues arise in that first 24 months, we can require that contractor to come back and repair that problem. And we've done that several times, in our Westwood 1 subdivision. The contractor had to come back and make several repairs because the street, within that 24-month period, started showing some cracking that it shouldn't have. But after that 24-month period, the street's basically the city's to take care of.
And that's the same issue with water and sewer lines. You have a 24-month maintenance bond. They actually TV the sewer lines month 20 or something to verify that it's holding its profile, et cetera.
Yeah, usually somewhere between the 18 and 24-month period, we send our inspectors back out along with some of David's crews. And we, like Steve said, we camera, utility lines, and we also walk and look at all the above ground improvements as well, just to make sure that there are not any issues that are related to either workmanship or materials, so that we can catch them before that 24-month period occurs.
Thank you.
Project number 5 is Holford's Prairie Road. The limits are all the way from 121 down to where Corporate Drive will eventually cut through. And again, this project, we've got just a little over $2 million estimated. That's actually money in addition to money that the county is going to give us through their 888 bond program. Denton County is going to pay $3.4 million. And we've estimated that it's going to take an additional roughly $2 million plus to complete that street. As a matter of fact, I can't remember if it's this council meeting or the next one, we've actually got our agreement with Denton County going to the city council for consideration.
I believe it's this month.
Yeah, Monday night, our council will be looking at that agreement with the county to share the funding on the payment.
And this is this high of a priority because of its future linking to the corporate?
That's part of it. Again, this is a project that Denton County funded in their 888 bond program. So this is money that the county has actually had programmed since 2008. And as you can see, I mean, it's a road that's not in very good shape. It's again just a narrow asphalt road.
Traffic is increasing on it.
Well, and it is going to connect to Corporate Drive, and obviously when Corporate Drive goes through, then I think you're going to see a lot more traffic.
Mm-hmm.
This road was basically gravel or river rock until probably, what, David, the late 80s?
Yeah.
And there was no water, no sewer out in that area, and we laid the water and sewer line, and we came back and asphalt when we were finished.
All right.
Most of the neighborhoods in this area or south of this area, south of proposed corporate are small streets that were basically gravel roads. And they have asphalt capital.
The other thing, the last thing I'll mention about Corporate Drive is, when we're actually in the midst of designing Midway Road, and between the Midway Road construction and then ultimately, when and if we do Holford's Prairie Road, we're going to realign this intersection. if anybody's familiar with it, you know, it's offset, it's very awkward. It's a four-way stop, but they don't really line up. So we're gonna fix that as part of the project. And again, we put a fairly high priority on it simply because, you know, we've got available funding from Denton County, and we certainly don't want that to go away, so.
And you have some escrow money too.
That's a good point. When the auto auction was constructed through our development ordinance, they actually put up roughly $250,000 in street escrow as part of the requirements for their development. So we've got that money sitting in the bank already.
What part of this project is connecting the green? I saw that it's the description.
Well, one of the things I didn't really mention about Corporate Drive is, you know, obviously Corporate Drive is connecting the green because it crosses the Trinity, and it's going to link to our green centerpiece. We think that when this is all finished, Holford's Prairie Road is going to be another way to get to our green centerpiece from other areas of the city.
Well, and you go to the green centerpiece, just the green actually on the map is Lisdola, LISD property.
Well, yeah, and it obviously
Center,
links.
Plus Leela, and that's another access point into Leela. Right now, it's not, it's more of an emergency access, but Holford Prairie Road is basically lines up, it's called Fish Hatchery Road on the north side of 121 Business.
Good.
And I'm not sure, but when we do Corporate Drive, we're going to be looking at different alternatives, you know, with regard to bike and pedestrian facilities and things. They're a little bit different than your normal four-lane divided thoroughfare. And you know, if we do that here, it's likely that we might consider some additional pedestrian or bicycle lane type of amenities ultimately when we do Holford's Prairie as well.
I would very much be in favor of that.
Railroad Street, there we go. Railroad Street is number 6. We actually had planned to rebuild Railroad Street with money that was left over in our last bond program. And we've had a couple of projects lately that where the you know, our concrete prices have just gone through the roof over the last I would say 12 months or so. And we've had a couple of projects bid where the concrete prices have gone up simply because there's such a high demand for any kind of construction material right now, you know, with the economy being good. And so, again, this is a perfect example of why we don't want to name specific streets in the ballot, is because even though we intended to do Railroad Street, because we had some bids that came in too high, you know, because of concrete prices, we actually had to kind of put Railroad Street on the back burner and hopefully be able to try to fund it through this next bond program. But this is the, you know, the Railroad Street south of 121 has basically been completed either by the landfill, and then the city built a large portion of it north of Bennett in our last bond program. So really, and then once you get north of Main Street, you know, it's already, you know, curbed and guttered, and it's in pretty good shape. So this is really the only segment of railroad that has not been repaired or upgraded. And it's kind of the same thing that we've been looking at. First of all, this section of railroad just has terrible drainage. I mean, anytime we get any kind of a rain at all, it just sets in water.
Actually, that part sets underwater.
Yeah.
This roadway has a 12-inch water line, if I'm not mistaken, a 24-inch sewer force main, a 36-inch force main, So there's a lot of pipe under this section of roadway.
You can see there where the trucks are just torn up the shoulder.
Does that get used by the school buses?
Yes,
Are
I've
they
seen
going
them
through
come
there too?
out there. They
The
turn down
yard,
and
the
go
yard is
south.
right there at the corner of
Yeah,
Purnell and
I knew
Railroad.
the yard was right there, but I didn't know if they went north towards Maine on
I
that
think they
section.
go to that to hit some of that signal to get across there too, instead of going down Purnell to Mill and then back across, but not 100% sure. I have seen them go that way to the north.
I think the next one is
If y'all have any questions, feel free to
Yeah.
just stop and ask questions or, whatever. I'm here for you.
The next one is Cowan, isn't it? Or no,
Down
Valley
Main
Parkway,
Street.
Valley Parkway.
There we go. Yes, the next one is Valley Parkway from Main Street to College. I didn't realize it, Steve, and you may know different, but we show that was constructed in 1970. Does that seem right? I didn't realize it was that old.
That was, I think they put that, it was here when I got here.
Is that
I got
right?
here in '76 and it was in, so.
Wow, that must be.
But I think it was
correct.
with Valley One, at first phase.
And I think this could be an interesting project. The first view is just a general view looking south toward Main Street from the fire station driveway. You got some lovely oak trees and elm trees, mature trees in the median.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna kind of drill down into the details. As you can see, we're getting some pretty serious faulting, and that's on the entire length of that segment.
Takes a lot of traffic,
It does.
A lot.
let alone the fire.
This is a little
the fire
closer to the
engines,
intersection.
heavy traffic.
And these are hard fractures. They're not nice little clean cracks that I can just go out and seal. This concrete's breaking. And I've got some pictures that'll show you what's eventually gonna happen to all of this cracking. This is the north end looking toward College. You've got the same conditions here.
There's a panel repair on your left.
This long section, this is turning around to College and coming south. We've had to do a little asphalt transition because that had separated 3 inches there and was creating a hazard.
Don't you just love our soil?
Yes. Here's a section that had failed so badly, it created a sharp edge, it would just literally rip a tire. So we had to do an asphalt patch on it. You see other breaks here extending out of it.
Now, the light is Civic?
I'm sorry? Yes,
The
that's
light
that's
is
Civic.
Civic?
Here's approaching the intersection of Civic. This hard fracture here is gonna end up covered in asphalt. Valley Parkway is a little deceiving. You don't think it's in that bad a condition until you start really looking at it.
And notice we don't have employment center on here, but there is a lot of
There is.
businesses on that section of the road. There's a lot of medical offices.
Well, you have safety
On the west
too,
side.
I mean, in between,
Well,
You've
you've
got the high school, I see high
Police
school
station.
students walking. I just envision you could make this street maybe something different and that's pedestrian friendly, that's vehicle friendly, because you've got the right of way width and you can't go beyond that, but you've got a lot of wide median there and maybe there's some compromise where you can create something special. And you see, just everything is rugged, torn, broken. It looks bad. There's a,
I like the bond on that.
this is in the front of the Lee Walker Government Center. This one had actually fractured and settled so bad we had to level it with asphalt.
there's gonna be some heavy construction traffic through there in the next couple of years.
There is.
Yeah, you've got the new county, Bobby Mitchell
Yeah.
Center going in there now.
Well, and those homes that are
Yeah.
going in on that other corner,
Yeah,
the far end of Civic.
I'm gonna get to the pedestrian aspect of it here. This is looking south. The sidewalks overall are not in bad condition, but I notice they go in and out a lot. They get up, and I think it was just as development came and they worked around utilities and different things, it was just piecemeal together. And so if you're walking along, you jump over behind the curb, and I do a lot of walking, and I don't like walking on sidewalks that are against the curb. That's not very comforting when this car is coming by at 40 miles an hour and you're 3 feet from them. You know, I think somewhere there might be a better solution for this.
Well, and this picture may be deceiving, but, you know, even if you look at this sidewalk, it looks like it might have more than 2% cross slope, which obviously doesn't meet ADA requirements either, so.
You have a lot of student traffic through there too.
This is turned around looking the opposite direction. See here, we jog in for a driveway, then we go back against the curb, then we jog in for a driveway.
And then again, it looks like you've got an excessive cross slope on the sidewalk, so.
And what happens there, if you go back to that picture, David, it also becomes not only with concrete and sidewalk, it becomes a maintenance issue. Now, somebody's gotta go mow that little 2-foot by 2-foot strip. And it costs me about $30 to go mow that little strip.
So David, I'm sorry, can you back up to that sidewalk? So what could you do in a situation like that to improve the sidewalk? Like,
That's something the design engineers would have to look at, but the first thing I see is you have space out here, so maybe you could narrow this median to where you could pull the sidewalk, create maybe a 5-foot wide sidewalk that has a grass buffer between it and the street. That's just a thought.
Has anybody been down 3040 where they're putting in that sidewalk that kind of meanders along on the south side of 3040 between Nudisol and Gerald, basically, yeah.
We're building a new house.
And they're connecting 2 sections of
No,
sidewalk.
I've not seen that.
And they have enough space that they're kind of meandering it, making it more of a walking path. And, you know, there's some plantings here, but again, you know, they're getting it away from the street because, you know, it's scary to walk.
Oh, yeah.
And people walk, bicycle, pushing kids in a stroller, that's not comforting.
If you trip and stumble or make a mistake, or if a driver makes a mistake, you've got no room for error there.
The other thing you were asking, what else could be done there, David's correct on what you could do. You've got a good large right of way. But you see the power poles, you know, one issue you could do, you can't afford it, but you could relocate those overhead power poles to underground service.
Oh, yeah.
However, that is very, very, very expensive. And, you know, we're able to do a few blocks every 10 years is basically what it's coming up to. I mean, that is so expensive to take, and that's a high power, high voltage line. It's more than your residential line.
But the aesthetics of getting rid of it is.
Yeah.
Incredibly
It'd be great,
valuable.
but I'm just saying, that's another
Incredibly
issue, because
valuable.
your right-of-way goes out to what, David, David and David, probably on a foot on the other side of that power pole. On the,
Oh, yeah.
That's what I would guess.
yeah, right in that area. So that's your right-of-way. The utilities franchise to use our right-of-way, city parkways right-of-way for their services. And that's where on your water bill, I mean, not on your water, your power bill, your gas bill, you see a franchise fee. That's the street rental fee that we get for operating that area.
I think especially where we can in thoroughfares like this, to put some of the utility underground, it just makes it I mean, we talked about thriving neighborhoods and making things look better, you know, that's just.
But you're gonna have another funding source, in my opinion, otherwise you're gonna burn this whole bond package for it going underground.
So for that strip of road, as it's drawn on the map, how many million are we talking?
Couple. I mean, I'm just, you know, right here cost me, just moving 600 feet, close to 3/4 million.
But a lot of the residential are underground.
Yes.
Right, it's
When you
not
first-
development, it's
when you
the
first
ordinance
do
has
it.
changed.
Well, actually, Valley Ranch did it too.
That's one of the things that, when we moved here in the early 80s, that was interesting, was to see that the residential
We were underground.
utilities were buried. just such a nicer look to it.
But most of these facilities where your transmissions into those areas, they were put in up front and
Yeah.
to lead to those developed areas.
Here at Civic, you know, the curb ramps are non-compliant, there's accessibility issues here, and once again, every sidewalk's zigging and zagging. And this was the most interesting spot. We actually added this as a result of a complaint. The sidewalk used to just be the top of the curb drain there. That was the sidewalk, and we added a portion here so you could have a path through here. The next project is just a continuation, really, of this one, is Civic Circle. Not quite as old, but not that good a shape either. And this is kind of the core of the town on the west side. You've got the rec center, you've got the post office, you've got the library, you've got banks, you've got employment centers,
County offices on
you've got shopping, you've got the high school right here. There's a lot of things in this area. Take a look at Civic Circle. This is just a view of the street here. It's a wide street with sidewalks. We've done some panel repairs here recently. One section had gotten so bad we had to come in and do some panel replacements. But we didn't catch everything, as you will see.
Both of these projects affect the new county offices that are right there. So there's a lot of
Yes,
county
new county
services right there.
offices.
So.
But Civic is experiencing the same problems that Valley is experiencing. These street lights were interesting to me. They're straight out of the 80s. They extend along the west side. Here's the panel repairs we did. They extend beyond here. But we had to do something here. This had gotten so bad near the post office. And this, and I'll show you the next picture, is what's happening in this was either some type of repair or something from years ago, and it extends from the library all the way up towards Main Street.
Well, in fact, I think we're getting ready to change it or do the
There
water line.
was a curve there when it first was
They
installed.
built half of the road and then they widened it.
Right.
Yeah.
And they just patched it then. I didn't know what that was. But as you can see here, the street is beginning to show symptoms of failure.
And actually, we're getting ready to replace the water line on this street, so it's gonna get patched again.
This is broken here. We're gonna have to actually fix, this is construction coming out of that new government center. They didn't cause this, that failure was there. They're just driving over it.
Now that one was a truck.
It's a truck, yeah.
Ironically,
Definitely a truck.
That's on the south side where there's no construction activity, so I'm not sure what caused
Oh,
that.
is that by the driver's, that's where
Yeah,
the dump
that's
trucks
coming in.
park to go take their driving test.
I guess they.
And do they pass?
So I kind of saw those two as, you know, a centerpiece project, replacing two roads in
Well,
bad condition.
my 2 cents worth here is, again, you talk about that is sort of the center of the west side. It's not the center of town, but it is the center of the west side. And with the new Winco development, if they're redoing all of that over there, that part of town is going to look way different in 3 to 5 years.
Well, you've already got CBS doing their thing.
Exactly.
And the high schools.
Right,
And the high school, the
schools.
brand new high school. I think we owe it to our city offices and our county offices to do something nice there. And it does need to be done.
I agree.
Can we move these to a lower priority?
We can move them anywhere.
Okay. To me, this is.
Yeah, we've simply listed that this is our first cut in terms of a staff priority. We just had to come up with a priority based on what we,
See, right now they're listed as 7 and 8, which you could be looking at 7 to 8 years before these even go to design.
Right.
And with, the high school brings a lot of people to town for games and those kinds of things. And, yeah, I think we've got to we got a hard look at some of these.
You know, and I want to add, piggyback on what you're saying. This is the center of the west side, and it needs the beautification. I would advocate strongly, even if it is $3 to $4 million, to get those power lines buried. That is where people go. That is what people are going to identify as Lewisville in a large part.
Yeah,
I mean,
people,
because of the city services that are right there, they may not go to any other part of the city, but they're gonna go to the library.
Yeah.
They're gonna go to the library, they're gonna go to the post office,
Yes.
you know.
the library, the post, you've got the library, the post office, the police
Recreation
station,
center.
DPS.
fire station.
County driver's license.
Yeah.
There's a lot of traffic in these counties.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every
It
day.
is,
Oh.
I mean, you go through there about 3:30, and you'll see a lot of people.
If you go to the driver's license office in the morning, you'll see more than you
Yeah,
want to see.
you'll see more than you
More in the
want.
afternoon.
Yes, I've done that recently. The next time I get to mail it in.
There's, in the question, when I gave you a number, what it would cost, I have no idea. It depends on how big that power line is. Now, I don't think this one is, but if you have a power line that's 68 KVA or better, okay, it has to go overhead. Okay,
Okay,
like the
it's not
ones
even
on
an option.
Garden Ridge. If it's the larger service feeders, our ordinance says anything 68 and below can go underground. But the utility, the electric companies need that because it generates too much heat in those conduits. So 68 and less, I don't think these are 68 on Valley. The ones on Garden Ridge are, even the short poles, there's some tall ones and there's some short ones, those are 68s.
Is there any possibility of utility companies helping with burying those? Because there's some advantage to the buried lines. You're not affected by
It is
it all.
for storm events, you're right. It depends on how we approach this with reconstruction. There are some requirements that we can make them do some of them. If we, David, as we add a lane or we do something, there is something. But if we're just putting something back as it is or same format, state law, and it's not just them, it's state law says they have the ability not to participate.
But we could always ask.
You can always
I know when
ask. We do.
And I know in another city, in their Old Town area, they went in and asked the utility companies, and all of them except, I think, one agreed to assist with part of the cost. They didn't charge them for their own labor. The materials they charged the city for, but not,
Well, even a contribution of any kind.
sure.
Well,
To-
Texas New Mexico Power, which is generally, we have Texas New Mexico, TXU, and CoServe in town. Texas New Mexico did this and paid all the labor. We had to buy the materials, we had to buy the transformers, but they did the labor. So they donated that to the plaza area.
And that's a significant cost.
So,
That's a significant cost. So that 2 million could come down if you get
and
participation.
don't get hung up on.
Oh, no, I'm throwing out the figure,
Yeah, it's,
because it could be 5, it could be 1, I don't know what it is, but any participation by someone else cuts our costs.
so what I'm hearing is on that one, and y'all will bring it up later when you get to prioritization and those kind of things, you would like to see some of the core centerpiece there, the utilities go underground in some form
Yes.
or fashion. Now, to that point, we probably wouldn't be able to do the entire road, and I don't know where it drops back down to underground, but say we were to get to that civic area.
Civic to Main would be where I would think would be important,
Okay,
the most important section.
That would be nice.
Anything beyond that would be,
great.
yeah.
I think it may go underground.
It goes underground somewhere, and I think it's where where that little shopping center in the northeast corner of Summit, Civic and Valley, somewhere it goes underground.
Right?
But
Dave, go down just,
even if it went to the fire station, I mean, anything
Doesn't go
Yeah.
past
into
there.
that intersection.
See
Yeah,
that?
that's it.
So
That's where the
Yeah.
residential.
That's just north of,
Where does it go underground?
Oh,
right there.
Right at
Couple hundred
Civic, it
feet
looks
north
like,
of
right
Civic.
there.
halfway between Civic and maybe
College.
College. Yeah.
Okay, so, you know,
Part of it's already underground. You have to also remember, zoom back in again, but not all the way down to the foot, a little bit more. So go to the corner of Civic and Valley. So go up just a little bit to the right, up, is right there where the county is gonna have their, right there.
This property here.
Yep, is where they're gonna have their, so, you know, that part of Valley right there. Does that still have,
now Civic's underground.
no, but I'm talking about Valley.
Oh,
I don't remember any overhead utilities there.
on Civic?
Yeah, you can see,
I don't-
you
No,
can see
Valley
the
right there.
poles.
On Valley on the west side, there's no poles. I think there's poles on the east side.
Yes,
Yeah.
to right here.
You can see them.
But if we're focused on the aspect that, you know, this is part of our community center with the county offices there, we'd want to remove those poles at least where they end right there, you know? Because we don't, you know, we do all the deal from Main to Civic and then there's poles in front of the county offices.
Again, I think we have to look at how that funding approach, working with the power company, see how, what's there. One of the things where you will see a change in that is you remove the ugly poles, but you get the ugly green boxes and green surface boxes, so you have to play that into your right-of-way when we're meandering through there.
Looks like it starts right here at CBS and runs to right there.
There you go. Yeah, if you're gonna do that, I agree with you, Ray, if you're gonna do that section, you do it all where it goes
Yeah.
underground.
And the boxes, you can always, I mean, there's different ways you can screen them and they still look better than a wooden pole that's
Oh, yeah.
crooked or leaning over.
Right.
Public art, and let the kids paint them.
Then you get into the power company program. They don't like shrubs around them and they don't like paint.
Yeah.
But we did find some utilities that are now using what they call screening. They put a factor, it's some kind of like glass, some of them are mirror. If you go to Austin and look down off of 6th Street, they've got some now that actually, they've got different glass images that go on. So, okay, we'll take a note of that.
The next project is College Street between Mill and I-35. This project, very similar to South Keely, is a project where at one point we had some county funding programmed, and then that sort of went away on us, roughly about $2.5 million. And so we've applied, we're applying through the COG to replace that $2.5 million. And so, lost my place, here we are. So this 1.1 million that we've got listed as the total is actually in addition to the 2.5 million that we expect to get from the COG for this project. And again, it's one of those issues where we think we're pretty certain we're going to get it. Although if something happened and we didn't, and this project was was one of the projects that we were gonna try to fund, this money would simply move down the list to whatever the next priority was.
You know, with this piece right here, on our subcommittee, Ray and I, the group had talked about making a bicycle transition to where College Street would be the east-west across the city. That we were advocating, instead of there being a new juncture at Fox with an overpass, that attention be focused there so that we connect the east side of 35, the west side of 35,
Right there.
where it wouldn't be a busy area. You're smiling.
As a pedestrian, I would love that.
As a pedestrian, that's what we're thinking. Main Street's too busy.
I cross at Main now, or Valley Ridge, and those are both kind of challenging.
That will be one of your items that you'll see is miscellaneous and trails. That value of that pedestrian bridge was about $5 million.
Okay.
And so we took y'all's information, did some research on it. I think that's right, David, wasn't it about 5?
That sounds
Yeah.
right.
And,
Ouch.
4 to 5 on that. And, we did talk about issues, how you get it across, keep the height,
Yes.
get the ADA and all that stuff. But yes, that is,
5 million. Ouch.
It has to start so far back.
You have to start far back, but it's, what a fantastic extension of our trail system and
Yes.
connecting the east-west side.
Well, once again, it's pedestrian and bike friendly.
Yeah, well, that's all it would be, so.
Yeah. Well, but once you get beyond onto College Street,
Right, right, right.
either side of College Street, and it would sure make.
Well, and you've got you have the aquatic park there,
It would
which
change
that
it a lot.
connection back. Now, that's more
But 5
the
million.
small children and families, but still, we've got to start moving with our feet.
And there's some pictures here that show some of the sidewalk issues
How fabulous it
that
looks.
you've just described. You've got sidewalk on one side against the curb and no sidewalk on the other.
Yeah.
And that's not consistent. It flip-flops as you go down College.
As you can see, the pavement,
You can cross the street to get back on the sidewalk?
Yeah.
Now, with this project, would it be sidewalk on both sides, or just do sidewalk all consistently on one side with a curb?
It could be
it could be,
Whatever is the best fit to get the ultimate benefit of what you're looking to do.
yeah, actually, the odd thing about College, this section of College Street, it's got a relatively wide street right-of-way, but the street, for some reason, and of course, this street is an old street, so nobody really knows why it was built this way. But for some reason, there's a very narrow parkway on the north side, but there's an extremely wide parkway on the south side. So it might provide an opportunity to maybe have a little bit wider sidewalk or maybe even a bike lane on that south side. Now, of course, the issue we always get into with these, anytime you're going in front of a residential property is working with the homeowners and trying to decide what they want and what they object to or what they prefer. So those are all issues that'll have to be worked out with the design, but I think that's a good point on this particular street is because of the way the street is off-centered in the right-of-way, and we have such a wide parkway on the south side, I don't think it would be physically that difficult to put in a wider sidewalk or even a bike lane on the south side.
One other thing on College and I know it's true from 35 back down to Cowan. The property owners, a lot of these properties have not been platted. They're old properties. And so the center line the property line is actually the center line of the street. Okay? So that's not a problem because it's prescriptive use. We're using the property as a street and sidewalk. But when we go in here, if we're gonna obtain some of that property, then we gotta work with them to replat that property instead of if we go outside of what our footprint is now. Okay. Now, several property owners have improved their properties and they have done that. They've backed the property lines up, resurveyed, replatted. So those are just a few items that, they're incidental, they're minor, but they're out there. You don't have to play with them.
This is,
Or actually, David and David will have to play with them.
this is College looking west. You can see the sign for the aquatic park there. And see there's no sidewalk connection there. There's actually, I think, a trail that comes in on this side of that aquatic park and turns toward it, but there's no sidewalk connection to it.
Well, yeah. That's a neat idea. Put a sidewalk to the aquatic park.
Yeah.
Then people would use it.
Yeah.
Gets pretty full on some summer days. It's a great park.
This is across from the school, and we have had 23 water main breaks on College.
Ooh.
So it's,
And that's a pretty short street for that many breaks.
and, yeah, it's a frequent flyer.
We've got Cowan.
Next street is the cross street there of Cowan. From Canal Street to Mill Street. The southern section is mostly asphalt with concrete curb and gutter and sidewalk. Once you get to about right here, all the way north is concrete. Pictures start on the south end. the asphalt portion looking towards Purnell. And ironically, the last little segment is concrete, so I'm not sure how that came
Hospital.
about. Hospital, okay.
And it was part from, it was
From Purnell,
from
wasn't it?
Purnell to the service road was concrete, and that was paved as part of, I believe, a long time ago, of access to the medical center, not the current hospital, but those services that were down on Purnell closer to the freeway.
Oh, I didn't know why, but it's unusual to have concrete, asphalt, and then concrete on the
Then
same
Edwards
street.
is concrete, and that was tied, I think that stops at Edwards, doesn't it?
Right there, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. As you can see, the asphalt portion is in terrible condition. The sidewalks are in questionable condition. Here we've got, the sidewalk is actually the stop at the top of the curb drain again. There are no ramps. And under the guidelines now, if I go in and simply repave an asphalt street, I have to install curb ramps where there are sidewalks. So that would be an issue for even a simple overlay. This is looking north from the same place. This is the cracking in the street. This is the sidewalk on the other side, no ramps. This is actually the transition there at Edwards where this is concrete and this is asphalt. There's some type of patch and failure here and this is in poor condition. As you can see, this whole thing is shattered. Okay, now I've skipped to the north side of Main Street. Here's a large failed area where we did an asphalt level up. Here's the other side of the street there where we will do an asphalt level up at some point, or a panel replacement. Here's the sidewalk. There's no curb ramp here. This was just a smooth transition to the street, but you can see the sidewalks buckled there, creating a barrier. This is looking south toward Main Street. There's a manhole block out failure.
Yeah, the sidewalks are bad through here.
You see the same things over and over. I mean, this street was built, I show 1975. So it's be 40 years old next year.
I parked at the SSAB during Western Week and, Western Days, and tell how old I am, I said Western Week. Western Days, and walking back towards Old Town through there was tough. The sidewalks are in pretty bad shape through there.
This jumps to the far north end over Prairie Creek. You can see a large section here is sunken. This collects silt and water stands when it rains. There's an old utility patch. This is the sidewalk on the north side. We've actually settled. We've got an asphalt ramp on this side of it to get you back to grade. And we've had 16 water main breaks on Callan. Not quite as bad as College.
And those, David, those are 12-inch, I believe, there, or 8s. This is the
may
water
be
system.
12s.
The water system here feeds, there's several water lines that feed the core of the city from the water plant. Water plant's just north at this point. So you have those 12-inch lines coming down Mill Street. There's 20s coming down Mill, and then they spider off to 12 inches and feed the core of the city on that end. And again, those lines were put in the 70s when basically we started taking water from basically the water plant, 76, 74.
And that's Calvin Avenue, Calvin Street. Next is Lewisville Valley 4 subdivision. This is a residential subdivision west of Garden Ridge, north of Main Street, and south of College Parkway.
As it says, alleys as well as the streets.
Yes, there's streets, sidewalks, and alleys in this one.
Alleys are really
This
bad.
particular subdivision has water line and sewer line issues. This is the one subdivision that had sewer line.
Is that Old Orchard to the left?
No.
Kirkpatrick.
Oh, Kirkpatrick. There's somewhat of a ridge, I guess, right through here.
Garden Ridge.
And a lot of this sewer drains back to the west and then goes to a force main, a lift station, a little small lift station, to a force main.
Yeah,
And
Clarendon.
the location's right
Hinesdale,
here.
Clarendon.
That sewer main is about 20 feet deep and in bad condition. And that is very difficult to dig up and repair. And can be
But
dangerous.
it has been done several times.
Let me give you a little history on this site, and I was kidding David with the Garden Ridge, but that's really what it is. There was a break point in this. If you go on Garden Ridge, right before you get to college, there's a Texas New Mexico Power substation, and right behind that was a water tower. Okay, that when they built that water tower back in the 70s, the ridge, they were not thinking when they designed it, sorry to say, but the houses on that ridge where David was talking about, that deep sewer line, that's one of the highest points in the city. The top of the second floor, or the second floor of that house was even with the bottom of the water tower bowl, and they could not flush a toilet or take a shower on the second floor. Right across, down at Bell Tower, right in that area, that was one of my first jobs here, was putting in a pump station in a guy's backyard in the alley in that corner to pressurize that area about where David was talking about. And so the joke was, we got Garden Ridge, we got Garden Ridge, and it was a ridge.
I'm right there.
So, I was kidding David, but I really wasn't, because that was the old.
Where are you, Bob?
It's almost like
Is
a
that your
Sterling
neighborhood?
rail line
Sterling
that comes
Lane.
together and they don't match.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, this
Near
is
the top.
unusual because you actually had all these valves isolated and the water would come down a 16-inch water line through the alley here into Steve's little booster station, and it would pressurize Lewisville Valley forward. Or otherwise, they had no water pressure.
If you come up Garden Ridge late at night when there's not a lot of traffic, it looks like that piece of property is on a mountain.
Yes, it is.
From 3040, it's like, whoa, you look like you're going way up, and you don't even notice you're going uphill. But if you look backwards, like once you
If you're
turn
on a
off
bike, you know
3040.
it.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say too.
In my car, I don't
Garden
notice
Ridge
it in a bike, it'd probably kill me. But it's amazing, and you almost have to do it when it's dark, because otherwise the traffic can all kind of distract you on that, how extreme that is. And you can, at 3040, once you turn off 3040, you can see the traffic light at Main Street.
Yep.
But it has to be pretty late at night without traffic, or you don't notice it.
This is Abilene Drive next to the school there at College in Abilene. And this section of street is in terrible condition. This is one of the curb ramps there in front of the school. There's a small lake in front of the school. We don't advertise that.
That's where they have their regatta.
Yeah.
But there is and you can see this fracture line here and this fracture line, and that is sunken down. There's quite a bit of this in this neighborhood. This is the worst location that I noticed, but there's standing water.
West Nile.
Standing water, it is bad for a resident, not for that, but it collects that sediment and leaves, and it's wet. In the wintertime, it's never dry, so how do you sweep that? You can't. It's just a muddy mess.
One wet leaf caused me to,
A lot
Crash
of,
on
some
the-
asphalt patching in the worst places.
It could cause a car accident. Leaves, slick leaves.
Here's a spot, doesn't look too bad, just got a break right here, but this is all settled. The sidewalk is sunken. You notice how this curb is exposed? I see a lot of that in this subdivision where the soil is just settled out. And I'll show you some manholes and what they're doing. Look at
Is
that.
this soil different than any place else in Lewisville? Has it changed, or?
It seems worse, but I mean, it's bad in many places. This just seems worse to me.
I think there was more fill done here than there was some other places. And so I think that's part of it.
But if you, I'm gonna show you a side shot of this manhole, and you see how exposed this curb is? There's a side view of that manhole. The manhole hasn't moved.
It's just the
What
The
street,
ground dropping out.
what street is that?
It's either Clydesdale, or it's one of the
East-west, about in the middle,
Okay.
if I remember correctly.
there's a lead walk's dropped 6 inches, but you notice the lead walk is flush with the ground.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of exposed curb, sidewalk. That was
A little bit unusual. I don't notice that much of that anywhere else. I notice it in other places, but it was extensive over there.
Is it because the residents have not filled, or is it just a natural?
I don't think so. I think it's
It
just the
happens.
soil and weather.
All right, so the solution to that, when you put in new roads, do they drop down another notch? Or you guys fill in what's missing?
Probably a combination. You know, and we'll bring in topsoil, you know, if we do this neighborhood, we'll bring in topsoil for the parkways and new sod and,
Yeah, that's a good point, good question, good lead-in, David. Is that when they do a roadway, when we leave it, it has grass, it's manicured, it's there. It's ready. And we water it for a little bit of time, and then we leave notes on the homeowners.
I know Sterling isn't like, this isn't the way it is on Sterling, so I'm wondering.
Is it better on Sterling?
Yeah, it's, my curb is even
It's
with the
flush?
grass, yeah, it's flush
And
with
this
the
is a
grass.
big subdivision, some sections, here's a small standing water,
and you can see the break in the pavement there. Here's another one behind it. You know, that's just gonna probably continue to get worse. Because we're down in the list now at
10-plus years. So we're projecting ahead to some degree here. And based on what we're seeing, it's not gonna be good at that time.
Again, that, another good point from David, is that this listing we're giving you, not only, you know, it's a 10-year window, but this list is gonna be something that future employees and future citizens and committees like this are gonna be able to use and continue that list on. There'll be others that take its place or may rank in priority, but, you know, there's $175 or $80 million worth of streets, we're only giving you 100.
There's a curb ramp that's not too good a shape.
Well, and in that same time, neighborhoods that are only 20 years old are going to.
40 years.
Uh-huh.
They're all marching to that
They're all
point.
marching to that point, so you're gonna
By
have a
the time
whole
you
group
get-
coming right behind them.
By the time you get to that, your 30-year streets that you're doing today will be up for.
Yeah, we're gonna look at subdivisions here that, you know,
We're not gonna be able to fund in this cycle. And they'll be on the top of this list next time, probably.
with others behind them. We've had 31 water main breaks in this neighborhood.
Now, that factored into it. And we also had the sewer line issues here, more so than the other residential neighborhoods.
Now, what, you may ask, what has happened to the water pressure in this area? We don't have the booster station anymore. What happened was when we figured this out in the early 80s, we had a car wash on Garden Ridge that couldn't run. They built a car wash, didn't check the pressures, tried to turn it on, and it was 200 yards from the water tower.
yeah.
And they didn't have enough water pressure to run their system, so they put an inline booster to make it work. But what happened was, all of the area north of Fox to I-35, to the north city limits, and over to Kirkpatrick, basically, we put in a different pressure zone. Raised the water tower, raised the head on the pumps, and so that area is now serviced like it should have been. And so, and that water tower's gone because it was useless, because it was, you know, it would not function in a higher pressure plane that we have today.
Next one is Indian Oaks. It's a large subdivision. There's really 3 different areas. This section right through here are asphalt streets with open drainage. This area through, I believe, to here is mountable curb. You'll see that in pictures. And then the area through here is just regular curb and gutter with alleys. This is the only section that has alleys. This section and this section both have sidewalks. This section does not have any sidewalks. So we've got a mixture of development here.
And when the developer came in this, I believe, early 80s, somewhere in that
Early
area, they basically wanted a rural setting. They wanted asphalt roads and bar ditches, what I call bar ditches. And
I'll hop ahead to that area if I can. Yeah, here we go.
you had the country flair, you had the country aesthetics, and so you have that.
You
area.
want it to look like Double Oak.
Well, Double Oak wasn't there except for a couple of houses, but yeah.
In the early 80s then.
Huh?
Early 80s, there was quite a few people on Double Oak.
He also didn't want to go too expensive doing the gutters.
Besides that.
Yeah, that's a developer choice there. They actually came in and got a variance on that, I believe.
And this is an area that evidently has terrible soil conditions. We have some real paving issues over here that get very severe because of the soil. You
There's a
see,
lot of foundation problems out in there too.
I can't imagine how bad that is. You see this whole shoulder here, well, not shoulder, roadway edge had to be repaved because it had just sunken and fallen off. And these asphalt streets are not that old, but we can't hold them together.
That's one area where your concrete with the steel and reinforcement is going to outlive your asphalt, in my opinion, and David's got all that information.
And as you move into the concrete sections, you know, you'll find sections that look pretty clean, but where you see failures, they become so hard that we have to do something with them, and I'll show you some examples here of what I mean. And you see a lot of this dipping, sidewalk and the street. This is the mountable curb section, and see that water's halfway up that curb there. And you see that break in the pavement. That settlement's 60, 80 feet long. It affects their driveway too.
Look, is that, David, on that picture, about 4 feet out from that water puddle, is that where the water was?
It looks like.
It looks like it.
So,
I hope
Yeah.
not, but it looks like it.
I bet it is. Look, well, you can see how it's run down the driveway.
Here, we got the same situation, the manhole's 6 inches higher than anything else. You see these breaks where that settlement's occurring. This occurred in the north. This is happening up in this area right here. Cloudy sky, Indian paint, and Hidden Trail. We did some extensive patching down the middle of Hidden Trail, panel replacement, I'm sorry, because the center of the street was just caving in. And I'm going to show you where it's beginning to happen here and here as well. You see that? The street
Yeah.
is built with a crown in the center. This is actually inverting down. Steve, I think you have a story about a truck.
yeah, corner of Cloudy Sky and Buffalo, I believe it's Buffalo Bend. Back, it's been 20, 25 years ago, I got a call from Waste Management and said, we lost a truck. And I thought, okay, it caught fire, ran in the ditch. Literally at that intersection, the truck was in it, and the truck literally fell in a hole 8 foot deep. The driver in it. Scared him to death. And, that whole intersection fell.
So this makes us a little nervous when we see that happening. And you can see the brake line down this side and the brake line down that side, where the street's
driving through
breaking
there.
and falling in.
There is a fault line that we understand that comes up from the Arlington area, back up through that area, it runs through this area to the northeast. We've actually had some issues, even close to the corner of College and Summit. We had some houses over there, that's been 10 or 15 years ago, where we had foundations literally just moving up and down. They couldn't determine it was on that fault line, but they felt it wasn't. It was a homeowner versus the developer type situation, but apparently the soils are real bad in this, well, throughout most of the city, but in this area, it's real common for expansive clay soils, and then in this case, it's not expanding, it's sinking, so, you know.
Yeah, we see streets that crack and break, but they'll remain level. You don't see this type of movement. I mean, this is pretty severe when you have this. You have to do something with this.
Sometimes there are sewer lines that can cause, if you have a break in a sewer line, but generally when we see this and there's a sewer line in the middle, the sewer line's generally intact. Because you see the manholes staying where they're at. We've had several areas like that. Yes, sir.
Does that fault line go through reserves at Timber Creek?
It goes up in that area, I'm not for sure. And again, that's more hearsay. You can find it on
I'm gonna look.
geo maps, but it's.
Is that where you're at?
The north side of the park. Of Memorial Park.
Of what, Timber Creek?
Reserves at Timber Creek.
Reserve at Timber Creek. There was a lot of fill in that area.
You can
Do
see
you
the
have
flag, the
problems?
reflection.
I know, I didn't know that when I took it, but I saw it.
You can see
What?
the flag and the
I'm just saying,
reflection.
there was a lot of fill.
Sidewalk
That's our
lane,
patriotic.
which is the flag, and that flagpole.
It's like a lake.
It was going down, so they filled, that's why all those big.
It's our, what's the reflecting pond?
Well, I wouldn't wanna live there.
Yeah. The funny is, when we're looking for houses, we looked at about 4 houses we liked in that neighborhood. A couple we put offers on, didn't get them, but.
It's a nice neighborhood. Here's a street to the south, and it's harder to tell here, but this center line is sinking, and you see the 2 breaks down each side. So these 2 streets, in my opinion, are gonna do the same thing the north-south street did. That center is just gonna collapse.
David, where's the sewer line in this?
I'm not sure, Steve. I don't believe it's in the center.
I didn't think it was on these.
And we've sewered or cambered every sewer line over there, and they're trying to solve this riddle. We never found anything. We've had 12 water main breaks, which is not as much as previous subdivisions. But I remember back in about 2001, when we repaved this with asphalt, we literally had to bring in cement-treated base and try to stiffen that subgrade because it just wouldn't hold. And I remember asking our inspector, I said, "What are we gonna do?" And he said, "I'm gonna pray."
Wow.
So I knew we were in trouble.
The inspectors, yeah.
Wow.
That's Indian Oaks.
Keep going.
I'd get to your 60 million anyways. We got
Okay.
one more.
There's one more. The Meadow Glen subdivision.
That's up to Ray how long he wants to go.
How's everybody feel? I mean, everybody okay with going to 9?
I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm off tomorrow.
Meadow Glen subdivision. This is area off 3040. This street here is actually named Meadow Glen. Runs up through Creek Meadow, down Antler Trail, Deer Run, and there's one leg of it that circles corporate here called Teakwood. We've done panel repairs over here twice to resolve issues because they got so bad. And once again, here's a project where we're projecting ahead based on what we see now and what we've seen in the past. And if you look at the crack ceiling there, that street is just cracking into pieces. Now, it's level today and it's sealed today.
How long does the seal hold?
Depends on the weather.
Not before it's gonna get fixed, even if we didn't fund it.
We probably need to go through there every 2 or 3 years
The seal it?
doing that, and we don't have that ability.
And that crack ceiling basically does is to keep the water from getting in, your water getting into the subgrade and causing you more problem. Is that correct, gentlemen?
Yes.
David?
Yeah, keep the water out. Here's a section in a cul-de-sac where it's settled since we were there. That wasn't there like that when we were there. We wouldn't have crack sealed up to that. Corrected that, even if we'd have taken asphalt, we would have done something with that. But there's extensive cracking throughout this neighborhood. Here's back where we did some panel replacements earlier, and you just still see the cracking, the scaling and breaking going on.
There's enough movement in that soil that it's literally binding itself. Actually, David, was it 2 or 3 years ago when it got so hot? We had surface pavement moving, not in this subdivision, but in general, where the street would actually buckle because of it got so hot.
At Fox and Old Orchard, it buckled 12 inches one day. We had to shut the street down and make emergency repairs. You had a hump there that was this tall.
Wow.
Here's where we did a panel repair, here's the side where we didn't. And like I said, right now, the drivability is pretty good. We're just projecting what's gonna happen with this pavement, the way it's broken. Here's standing water, community mailbox. And we've only had 8 water main breaks.
So, water main breaks, is that common in Lewisville? I mean, do I need to expect that in my neighborhood coming up?
Now water mains are made with PVC.
Okay.
PVC seems to be performing much better than the old ductile and cast iron lines. Those ductile lines in this soil, once they get to this age, they break.
Okay.
So depending on where you live and what type of water line,
Vista Ridge.
you have PVC water lines.
Great.
And on that side where we mentioned that we have like 4 million in concrete and asphalt repairs, we do what, $1 million to 2 million a year on water line replacement projects in neighborhoods. We're trying to replace those old lines.
The next subdivision, Lewisville Valley 1. And this was the first development in the valley. And it's actually the oldest, obviously, about,
The ABC streets.
yes, 1970. So this pavement's 44 years old. The reason it's not higher on your list is we've replaced most of the water lines. These water lines through here have been replaced at different stages. And then these 3, the A, B, and C street have been replaced. I don't think that these have, but we've only shown 1 water main break in the last 15 years. So evidently they were the last to be built and they're in better condition.
I see we're doing planning projects on both sides of Old Orchard, but what's planned for Old Orchard itself?
Nothing on this list. It would be on an extended list if we continued to run it out. We went through here and did panel replacement, sidewalk repairs, and curb ramp installations about 2 years ago. But it's not in great condition. This is a project, once again, we're projecting out with the panel repairs we've done here. I would say it's in fair condition now. Once again, given its age, I worry about where it's gonna be in 10 years. I'll show you some of the pictures. You'll see, here's where the water line went in, this strip through here. And here's where we did panel replacements and sidewalk repairs. And here's what you see now in between the two.
And going back, something that you just saw in there are mailboxes.
I've
One
got
of
some
the
pictures.
ADA issues that we deal with is clearance between where a wheelchair can get through. 36 inches, David, is that correct?
48 now.
48 now? Okay, so when we come back and redo these streets in the future, there's gonna have to be some workaround on how we do individual mailboxes, where we go to cluster boxes, or where we go with some kind of, where this one has a relatively easy mailbox, but it's got a brick ledge on it that's 2 foot out into the walkway. So that's something, when we get to those points in these subdivisions that have mailboxes, we also have to address that issue.
Yeah, we have about 1,200 of these in Lewisville. And under the current guidelines, we're supposed to have 48 inches on the pedestrian accessible route. And as you can tell, we don't have 48 inches.
The community cluster mailboxes are so much safer.
So what we
Yeah.
do, if we do a repair here at a mailbox, our interim solution is to widen it back.
Now, are we widening that on private property? Generally not.
No.
1 foot off from the water meter, or 1 foot off is generally the city right away in the property line. If you see that point on there. The water lines and valves and fire hydrants, we have a 2 foot easement. that can go up into the yard. Each of the houses have some kind of easement around those boxes, but generally, on this, like this one, the actual property line's 1 foot
Yes.
closer to the home.
And on every mailbox, that doesn't get you exactly 48 inches, because this is normally a 5-foot sidewalk, so if we extend it 12 inches, we're at 6 foot. We need that mailbox to be exactly at 24 to give us the 48. And I'll show you, and as you can see, this whiskey barrel is not gonna give us enough clearance. Standing water, here's the water line replacement, here's the standing water. This is over on Applegate. As you can see, we did a panel repair, and this is what the street looks like beyond it. There's a tree and sidewalk. That's on Applegate. So that's what I worry about, the age of this pavement. I know it's approaching the end of its life. It's just a given of when it's gonna happen.
Now, on these particular streets, one of the complaints that we generally receive, you have parking on the street, and can't remember what the end, there's one area where there's, if you have a cul-de-sac or you have an area of turnaround, you got cars parking, it's hard to get an ambulance or a fire truck in there and get them in and out. So that's
At the end of Applegate.
It's Applegate, okay. So there's a couple of things that when we get into the future, you know, we got trees in there, we've got, do we need sidewalks, do we need all of this? Does that street, some of these streets may need to be expanded. The problem is, we've never had the opportunity or the willingness of some of the property owners to let go of that land. So how that works in the future, the fire departments and police department are quite aware of those particular streets. They have those on their list, so they make do.
And we can't have a city ordinance about cars on the street, parking, correct?
You can, it's just,
It's not popular.
you have some, Debbie, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, typically on a residential street, that's never, well, it just never flies, because people want to have parking in front of their homes, you know, and, you know, we've had a few instances near schools where we attempted to, limit parking, and they were residential streets, and, you know, those issues kind of went down in flames pretty quickly, so.
Okay, next subdivision is Sylvan Creek. That's southwest of Old Orchard, and it splits both sides of Fox Avenue. We've done panel replacements through here, we had to, and then I'm gonna show you the condition of the pavement. It's very fractured, very much like Meadow Glen was. You also get a lot of dipping. Here's where we did, looks like panel replacements. Here's the pavement that extends beyond it. Sidewalk, standing water. You see the same symptoms in every neighborhood. Just some more severe. There's a curb ramp. There's an curb reveal, I call it, where the ground is settled behind the curb.
Now, that area in the past had a lot of drainage issues.
Actually, what was that was what we call Sylvan Creek, the park. God, it's not Ellis. Is it?
Austin Ken Ellis, is that?
Yeah, it's the northwest corner of Fox and Old Orchard. There was a creek behind the set of homes just south of Fox.
Yeah.
And there was a creek behind there. Well, that was area that was filled when they developed the property. They didn't compact it very well. The houses, actually, the yards were up at the base of the foundations. Most had mortgages on those properties, didn't want to dedicate some of the, the banks didn't want to. So it finally got to a point of issues. And they finally said, okay, there was a bond issue in 98 or 96 that voters approved about 1.3 million to go in if the property owners would dedicate, and the banks would dedicate the creek, they own to the center of the creek. If they dedicate to the city, then the city went in and rebuilt, and did rebuild that creek, filled it up, put boxes in that area, and basically redid that area to salvage those 20 homes. But yes, there was a creek back there. It's now boxed. And once you get past that subdivision to the south, it turns back into an open ditch. But it's non-developable right in that corner.
Trying to sell it. Been trying to sell that corner for years.
Yeah, they have.
And once again, you know, these subdivisions at this point on the list are not ones we're recommending to rebuild tomorrow.
They're ones we're looking ahead, thinking, you know, 5-10 years from now, we're gonna have issues there.
And they would be, if we don't use all the money up here, that money would start sliding down to these
Yes.
lower end projects.
There are gonna be other subdivisions.
That may catch up to these condition-wise.
Exactly.
That's inevitable.
Next is Bel Air Boulevard from 121 to Edmonds Lane. Actually, it'll be just a little short of Edmonds Lane is where I think the next phase started.
That's like a roller coaster.
Yeah. Also, the westbound section from just west of Southwest Parkway to just west of Village has been overlaid with asphalt years ago. And I'm gonna start there with the pictures. Get my hand, there we go. This is that asphalt portion I was talking about. As you can see, the cracking and breaking. Also, the sidewalk goes along the back of the curb on Bel Air.
As long as that sidewalk, that's newly patched sidewalk,
Yes,
or recently patched?
yes. I don't remember, I wanna say 2013, we came through and did some panel repairs on Bel Air and also did some sidewalk repairs. Otherwise, these pictures would look worse. That's part of that second tier of maintenance that we do to extend the life of these streets.
Right there, about where you are right now, though, that is a connector to the trail
Yes.
that goes down to Central Park.
I took this picture as the car was, it was kind of alarming how fast a truck had come by before him. And once again, when you're walking along these sidewalks on the back of the curb, that can get a little touchy.
And you've got bicycles and pedestrians going through there to the trail.
Here's some of the patching we did in 2013. Concrete portion, like I said, we've done some panel repairs, so I would rate it in fair condition, but given its age and what we've seen, you know, I don't think that's going to hold.
You know, where you are on our project list, pretty far down and it's sort of across the cut point, and God willing, we get there. If we don't get there, this is gonna have to wait until the next bond issue, pretty much.
No, we pull it up on the maintenance. We'll still do panel repairs, salvage those areas that are worst case. It'll give patchwork.
Okay.
Just like we're doing now, those streets were.
I may have to come in and overlay this
Asphalt portion again with asphalt.
Again, I come from the school district side of this thing. I don't know why we're selling or stopping at 60, 100 million. I don't understand that. School districts don't bat an eye at 500 million. Why are we stopping 40 million short?
It's our bonding, well, there's two things. There's the bonding capacity, as council has come through and said, here, you know, here's our debt rate. And so here's what we can do. What our calculations are to keep that same debt rate is the 77 million. Okay, so we just split
With the number, the parameter they set by tax
Right.
rate.
Your recommendation, you know, you can recommend, like we talked about, if you went up 1 cent, I believe, you could go to 89 million or something like that. So those are things that, you know, you can recommend. council again has that final discretion on, do they want to increase the debt rate to do that? Does 20 million more at a penny or whatever it is, you can get 2 or 3 more streets on here. You're not gonna get the 170 million of streets.
That's,
In that, and with, again, you've gotta take the economics in this, the school district, the county, and the city tax rate all together. What can the community hold? Carry on school district, just my personal opinion, been here a long time, school district can pass just about anything they want.
Not
Okay.
anymore.
No, well, I know, but I mean in the past.
Not anymore.
The school district, helping the kids, helping that, and I agree with them. I mean, I voted for every one of them, but those have the general capacity to carry more weight. But.
I think one thing that helps us here is the thriving neighborhoods.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these projects are thriving neighborhoods, so, you know, people live in those houses and they have to deal with those potholes, they have to deal with those road conditions every single day, and so that's gonna be incumbent on us outside of this committee to educate them.
Right.
About, you know, stepping forward and making a commitment, investment, and whatever that looks at. We'll look at more and maybe it won't be 170 million, but it'll be.
And that is a good point. We cut it off at 100 million, okay? And if there's more you wanna see, I can get you the list.
yeah.
But, you know, it's just, it comes in reality. What can you actually sell and get through?
Another thing about Bel Air, like you said, the trail crosses here. You've got a lot of retail here, and you've got neighborhoods
Heavy
in
traffic.
between and on the end. So
Schools over to the left there.
And it's really important because it's how I get from point A to point B. It becomes really important.
This is one up the list.
if you want to do it, I'd like to see the
Not about
sidewalks
90.
pulled off the curb and create a walkway.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's that little neighborhood right above,
Right here?
there, yeah, that comes in, and there's a light, like right there coming into Bel Air. Where's Southwest Parkway?
Right there.
Yeah, that light right there, boy, that's a funky little turn right there.
Yeah, it's Oak Man or Oak something. Then you got Rawlin Park north of Bel Air, and you've got some trail system into that area it comes down to.
All right,
Is-
we're doing good.
The next project is East Purnell from Mill Street to Railroad. Just a wide concrete street. It was constructed in 1970. A little bit of a tale of 2 different conditions here. This section through here is pretty bad shape. We did some panel repairs, we had to, it had gotten so bad, and you're gonna see the conditions now. Once you come down the hill and you get to the level part, the condition gets a lot better. It's the same age, but for some reason, I guess it was much more stable down here at the bottom of the hill.
Now, that's industrial mostly.
Here's residential.
Yeah.
There is
Where's
some
the
residential
learning
in there?
center for the school district? It's about right there where the residential is.
Talk bus barn,
That's our bus
No, no.
barn.
Well, before you get to the bus barn, there's
that's a
Right here.
concrete pumping operation.
it's a Starfish Cafe. Where's it?
Oh, it's on,
It's over to the left more.
That's on the other
It's
side.
over-
One side of Mill Street.
it's on the other side of Mill.
Okay.
And speaking
next
of,
to the
other
left.
side of Mill Street, that was a project that we were able to do in part of the bonds, and Purnell was not on the list. And what happened, the citizens did not want, on Richland Street, did not want to provide all that work, so the council took that money and built Purnell. And
Not a
that
minute too
Purnell
soon.
was to be an asphalt street, and David was very good at working the concrete prices and was able to concrete that portion of Purnell.
And not a minute too soon.
One thing you'll see
That
here,
was bad.
another case of where you have sidewalk, you don't have sidewalk, you have sidewalk, you don't have sidewalk, and it flip-flops on both sides of the road. So I'm not sure you could get from one end to the other without walking in the street or on the grass. This is at western end, this is where a sewer line replacement went in. See the condition of the pavement around it. Again, no sidewalk on either side right here, no curb ramps. repair we did, but this is what the street now looks like connecting to it.
It's a shame that you can't line up most of the residents and just show them all these pictures and say, folks, we don't have enough money to fix all of this. We need some more.
And once again, if we don't do it now, it's not gonna be cheaper. It's gonna get profoundly more expensive.
On the Purnell side, one of the projects that will be in play that's been funded is that residential neighborhood, right in that area. That was McKenzie-Hembry area, that's been funded. That converts that to concrete, does it not, David?
Yes, it does.
Okay, next we have the Highland subdivision. This is the largest subdivision north of 407. A lot of the water line has been replaced. We didn't have a choice, given the number of water main breaks we were having. We had to go in and replace the water lines. But now we're dealing with the paving issues. I don't have very many pictures, I apologize. Here's where the actual water line replacement occurred. You can see the condition of the street around it. And this has probably happened since that water line was replaced. This would have been flush and clean when that patch was placed. We're actually over there now in Maxwell doing some small panel repairs and sidewalk repairs just due to the conditions. And you know, if this is not funded in this cycle, we'll continue that for years to come to keep the neighborhood in service. Here's the alley connecting to the street. We've got some alley problems over here from what I remember. Not that we don't in others, but they
Have underground utilities there?
I believe so.
On Aspen, yeah, underground.
yes, everything's underground. Here's a water line patch. Here's one where we're not gonna get our 48 inches.
You got 18 maybe?
Yeah. I don't know what we're gonna do here, other than talk to a homeowner. But if memory serves, this entire area has mailboxes and sidewalks. This was the single largest subdivision as far as coverage of mailboxes right in the middle of the sidewalks.
Can the city mandate that those mailboxes go away and you put in the community boxes? Or do you have to continue and work around them?
I heard the post office can make, no?
Post office,
I don't know.
No?
Steve and I and the city attorney and my supervisor, we all met and discussed this, and we bogged down quickly with it. We didn't walk away that single day with the solution. I think we're gonna have to work towards a solution.
I know that when we moved into our neighborhood, I was not pleased with having a community mailbox.
I loved them.
But
Great.
after a while, and knowing your mailbox is locked, and anything that gets dropped off is in a locked box, there's a real advantage to it.
It makes a difference.
The security for your mail is amazing.
Yeah.
And if this is a problem and people, what do you do in this case if the person won't give you part of his yard to make a sidewalk?
I'm gonna hope I don't have to repair that section of sidewalk,
Yeah, because, I mean,
because I don't have a good solution.
and, you know, somebody comes along and moves in on that street that's wheelchair bound and they need to get from point A to point B, what do we do?
Yeah.
It's something we're gonna have to solve, because if we were to go in here tomorrow and rebuild this subdivision,
I have to leave that.
it's staring us in the face.
Yes, it is.
I know Valley Ranch took out all their brick and they have multi-unit and it was great. They took all, and their houses, the subdivision I was in was built in the 80s. And they took out all the brick ones.
So that's something I think we'll have to continue to work on, and obviously we'll have to have it solved before moving into a neighborhood where this is present. And this is gonna be the neighborhood where it's gonna happen the most.
Yeah.
Here's where we've stepped around one doing our repair to get that 48 inches. That is the Highlands. And one more subdivision, that is Lewisville Valley 5, Section 3. That is north of Valley Parkway and west of Garden Ridge. We've done a lot of panel replacements. Valley 1, 2, and 3. Valley 5 here is on the list, you don't see here, but it's in better condition than actually Valley 5, Section 3. Once again, you're gonna see the same symptoms here that you saw in the other. Broken street, broken sidewalk, broken alley, broken street.
It was built late 80s, early 90s?
No, actually early 80s.
Was it early 80s?
84
84.
was the acceptance date, so it was probably constructed in 83 into 84. Alleys are pretty bad over here. Here you see a number of things, this little patch, a break, a trip hazard, and you also see that exposed curb we've been
Grandma's
talking
quilt.
about. Yeah, a little bit of everything. Broken street, standing water, you can see that's sunk about 2 inches right there.
Love the newspapers.
That's sunk about 3 inches. The water drains this way, so it doesn't collect water. I saw this a lot in this neighborhood where the lead walks broke off the curb. I bet I saw 8 or 10 of those in this one small area.
There's a piece of it lying up there on the sidewalk.
I didn't notice this in any other neighborhood, but I noticed it here.
Now, was that built by the developer?
Developer build all of these. There's very few streets that the city builds. In most subdivisions, is that correct, David? I mean,
Yes.
And so this hasn't been touched since it was built?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Other than maybe a minor repair we did, no, we've not done any panel replacements. Of course, no compliant curb ramps, trip hazards. That's Lewisville Valley 5, Section 3. Valley Ridge East. We talked about that one there in the first project.
Yeah, there's a little stem.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have any pictures of it, so.
Yeah,
Now, is this is going to entail a bridge?
yeah.
That's why it's so
You'll
expensive.
notice that this is a rather expensive project for such a short piece of street, and it's simply because it's almost all bridge, so. And we've estimated, you know, it's got a median up here and then it narrows down, and so I've, at least for estimating purposes, I've assumed that we might do a 4-lane street with no median, you know, through this section. You can see we're a little bit past the, well, actually, this actually gets us right to the 100 million that we were wanting to bring to. You know, in some respects, I think this is a pretty important section of street. Obviously, it connects our railroad park to the future corporate drive and the green center piece. You know, on the other hand, you know, obviously, we've spent the whole evening talking about aging subdivisions and how terrible the paving conditions are, so it's sort of a balance. And I guess that's why it ended up a little bit lower on the priority list in terms of a staff opinion. You know, to be honest with you, I think this section of street could go either way in terms of priority. It just depends on where you balance it with regard to trying to take care of some of those neighborhood concerns versus, you know, building a new street that makes an important connection.
Do you estimate what traffic counts will be? Do you have any ideas? what
Yeah,
you
that was my
expect?
question. I was wondering how, because it seems to me to be an important piece in terms of traffic flow.
Well, I think it very well could be now.
Once corporate gets built and
Yeah,
the other
once
one
corporate
top
gets
goes
built.
up.
And 35.
Yeah, I
gets
could,
bigger
I could
mess.
foresee, traffic, especially coming from the Carrollton area through here and then jumping up to 121, or even continuing up Valley Ridge once it's extended.
Or coming on down to 35.
Yeah.
What this does for you also, in my opinion, that connection opens up another east-west route, especially when 121 is shut down for some reason. Right now, you get gridlock. There's really no way to get to Dallas North or anywhere else. When all this is built, you'll have basically two parallel roadways that can carry traffic. You'll hear, as David mentioned earlier in the meeting, you have some folks that really may not like that crossing because really that Valley Ridge just dead ends into the park. Okay, and so do you want to increase traffic flow on the north side of the park? Well, you know, in my opinion, you got Valley Ridge that's going through and you're not really entering the park at that point. There are no activities on the north other than the animal shelter. Now you do have the new soccer center on Bud McDaniel's property right in that area that's been built, the new Dallas Burn or something, whatever their name is. So that's one issue that, you know, keep in mind. But it is really, to me, gives you that opportunity. If you did not have that crossing and 121 was locked up, you would have to come down Railroad Street, down to that point where David is now, and then back up. And that's just probably another mile and a half that you've got congestion. Then you could get people trying to exit off and go in the park and get lost, and you know, then you've got more headaches. Once they do that once, they won't do it again.
David, what's this project possible funding for any of the other resources that would help us with corporate? Is there any potential for some funding there? I know anything's possible, but realistically, what do you think?
Well, for instance, this is probably a street that we could petition for some COG funding for, because it's a large enough street. Typically, the COG is only going to fund streets that are considered arterials. And this is actually an arterial on our thoroughfare plan. So it's conceivable that at some point in the future, we could get some COG funding.
Awesome.
And there again, it's sort of like the ELAP funding we had on Fox. If somehow we had this funded in the bond program and then we ended up getting COG funding instead, that money would just slide down the list.
Okay, question, my brain's working overtime here on this piece. The Elm Fork of the Trinity River, do they kayak through that section?
Yes.
Okay. If you're talking about extending the green and you're kayaking through there, and you're not far from a rail station, and you're not far from another park, how important does that all come together at that point in time? Does it connect?
Well, yeah, let me give you an overview of that. David?
Because I'm thinking in terms of that green piece, where you've got kayaking and possibly bicyclers and all sorts of things that could possibly happen at that point.
Right.
They're not now, but they could.
Very close to happening now.
Yes.
We're going to be in the design process of a launch site in Leela up by the dam for kayaks and canoes and
I knew
paddling
about that
trail.
one.
There's now, it's been designated as a 22-mile paddling trail from Lewisville to Irving. At this site, at that crossing on Corporate that we're talking about going across the river, we'll be putting in probably some kind of an emergency launch. The paddling, to get designated, you need about a 6-mile run to get to that. So from the dam to Hebron Parkway, where they're taking out of the kayaks now, is 6 miles. So we'll have an emergency or some kind of access point right, there you go, right up in, where we cross, right here. There'll probably be some where we can launch a boat, we can get an emergency, an ambulance in there to help in that area, but we probably may or may not have a takeout point there. The takeout point is going to be,
It's down here.
Right here.
Yeah, right there.
that runs your
Yeah, there
6
it
miles, and that's where they're taking out now and jumping the curb and almost getting hit every time they do that.
And that crazy rough rock.
So,
and-
to answer your
Yeah.
question, yeah, there's great opportunities for this to be in the green, in that roadway. Is that kind of where you were headed, or?
That's my thinking is this road could become very important to us and that kayaking trail because of, just because of where it sits.
Yes.
And I'm even thinking, I mean, we go down, and this is kind of sort of off topic, but we go down and tube, and there's a horseshoe. And all we do is the horseshoe, because we're usually short on time, and it's like, this is fun, and we can do this fast. Well, you can either put in or take out at that spot and just do half of that 6 miles.
That's something we'll look at, you know, on this. Like I say, right now, we're designing the takeout points up at the north and Hebron especially, because it's so dangerous. And now we actually talked a little bit about that, and then we started looking at, okay, trying to keep that designation point in there. I don't know what it does. We'll have to research that. If we put one in between, does that hurt anything? I don't think so. I wouldn't think so.
Well, anytime, if we get this kayak trail going the way we want it to go and the way everybody wants it to go, you are bringing people to town and people who spend money. People who spend money help us fund these roads.
I agree.
This
We'll-
could all be
we'll
really,
look into
really
that.
important to us.
And that's almost like leaving out the front sidewalk to a house, the way I'm seeing it.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful front door, but how do you get there?
You know, I'm thinking this is another one of those that I feel maybe should bump up a little bit
On
on a priority list.
which one, on what?
Well, this section that we're talking about here,
On the
this,
little bridge? Okay.
doing this bridge and doing it closer to that corporate piece.
Well, and we thought that may be the case. In fact, when we first made our priority list, we didn't even list it, and then we thought, well, we think that the committee might be interested in this particular section of street and may want to bump it up, so let's at least capture it in that 100 million. So that way.
I just don't feel that, or I feel that along the way somewhere, this is a point we're going to have to sell to the residents of town. People, you extend your recreation areas, you bring tax dollars. People who come to Railroad Park for a baseball tournament, to play with their dogs, whatever, they leave money on their way out of town.
Another project that kind of ties in with this, and I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but the DCTA recently received a grant from TxDOT to build a trail that will link all 3 of their stations. And so it starts down here at the Hebron station, you know, comes up Railroad Street, goes through the Railroad Park, and then up Valley Ridge. So, you know, we'll already have a trail that's relatively close to that area that's being funded through a TxDOT grant.
Good point.
When will that begin?
Actually, they just had their pre-construction meeting today.
Okay, so it's here.
Yeah, it's here.
And we got, I think I mentioned last week, maybe I didn't. We got a grant for the Garden Ridge Trail from 35 down to Valley Parkway or College, I can't remember. Valley Parkway.
Yeah.
You'll be seeing more of those on the trails. And again, somebody asked last week, anything that ties to a road, that ties to a trail, we'll package those two, or if you approve them, we'll make sure those construction projects link at that point.
We got 2 more to look at. Duncan's left.
2 more quick. Try to make this work.
Good old Duncan.
We've got, the number 21 is Duncan Lane.
I'm surprised to see this belongs to us. I didn't realize that was still Lewisville
Well,
at that point.
this is one of those odd situations where and this city limits line on this map is not correct. The city limits line is actually right down the center of the street right of way. So, Flower Mound has the street on the west side, and Lewisville has the street on the east side. So that's why when you get the school district, when they built the 9th and 10th grade center, built the east half of the street from about that point all the way up to FM 3040. And of course, when you get to that point, I think there's an asphalt transition, and then it narrows down to just 2 lanes, and this half of the street isn't built. So this street is really more of a just trying to complete a street that's only partially built right now. I think we got. Oh, we did get pictures.
There's some nice houses.
So.
They're building a retirement community at the corner.
On the left side?
Northwest side.
The last project is one that has to do with one of the focal identity points that was identified in the 2025 plan. There you go. And don't pay too much attention to the exact alignment that we've got drawn on the map here. It's just kind of a representation, but you know, I mean, it's quite obvious that this street connection in this intersection is rather awkward, and it's not the safest thing.
How does the 35 reconstruction figure into this? Do they figure into it at all?
Probably not.
Not much.
Because that's a nod off the freeway also.
Yeah, most of the I-30, I think the I-35 is going to fix some of this problem down here, the way this is kind of configured.
Okay, yeah, that's all.
I don't think it's going to hit anything up this far.
Okay. Because those are 2 of the strangest connections I've ever seen in a town.
Obviously, this area here is an area that's been identified as one of the 3 focal points in the 2025 plan. We think one thing that might help this area out significantly is trying to realign this street in some manner, possibly line it up with the entrance to the mobile home park to make it a 4-way intersection, probably a signal. And then try to, you know, obviously there's people that use the street going south, so we're going to have to do something. And I don't know whether we'll ultimately disconnect this or somehow cul-de-sac it or what we're going to do, but somehow this needs to be reconfigured. You know, I don't know. At this point, I don't know what we'll do with the opposite side, but you know, given that this is a part of that focal point, plus it's an entrance into the old town, we want to at least try to address I guess what I would consider the north side of 121 at this point. And we've estimated that at roughly, well, almost $2.9 million by the time you add inflation. You know, and there's obviously a lot of right-of-way to construct or purchase, and
That'll take a lot of thinking.
yeah, that's why I said this project. You know, whenever we get to building this and designing it, it probably won't look anything like this. But we had to come up with something to show you on a map. So. Anyway, that's our $100 million. And like we've mentioned, actually, what was it, 178 million we had in streets alone? We had a list of roughly $178 million worth of streets, and just, I guess, for simplicity and efficiency's sake, we were asked to cut that down to 100. So, obviously, you know, we've got more streets on an additional list that if you're interested in seeing that, that's something that we can provide.
Did your list capture most of the horrible streets? I don't know how else to describe it. You get some really bad stuff up there tonight.
I would say so,
And there's also projects that are already funded and in design that are addressing streets that would never be a part of
All right,
this.
because they're already going.
Yes.
Did we, I mean, are there still serious problems out there that we just didn't get to just because of the numbers?
I don't want you to think the sky is falling.
I don't.
It's the natural course of streets in any city.
Yes, sir.
We're all facing the same dilemma. And you have to make that continuous investment in them. And then it just becomes a question of how much. That's your dilemma, is how much. You know, I'm sure there may be projects on here that don't make this process. And what we'll do is we'll focus that first and second level of maintenance on those subdivisions. So when next cycle comes around for this type of program, we'll evaluate what condition they're in and where they fit at that time in the priority. So there's things we'll continue to do to keep all these streets in serviceable condition. But we have to make this continuous investment, because if we don't, then that snowball gets giant. And then there's no recovery.
And I think, to Karen's point, the last meeting and what we heard, what I heard in all the 2025 plan meetings that I attended, is that it's time for Lewisville to make an investment back into the infrastructure, back into thriving neighborhoods, and really put some dollars into how our community looks, how we can travel from neighborhood to neighborhood, from different parts of our community, and not that it was neglected, but it wasn't, Lewisville wasn't maintained at the level that the folks that were in these meetings think that we should. And so, you know, at some point we're gonna have to, and now's as good a time as any, that we're gonna have to make some strong commitments to invest back in our community. So,
That's what we're going to, and that's what we're going to have to sell, is that commitment back to our town.
the bright red is what we've done in the previous bond program. Most of that is done. There's still a few outstanding streets that haven't been done yet, but they're in process. And then the kind of the darker brown, reddish brown color are the ones that we went through this evening. So you can see between the last bond program and what we're proposing, you know, we're trying to spread it out around the city, and it's quite a few streets.
Yeah, you did a good bit.
So if the committee so desires, we can ask staff to look at their priorities and bring back some that didn't make the threshold that we saw here. I mean, I think it would, at some point, would be good to at least look at some of them. Maybe we go there, maybe we don't, but if we don't, we should at least take a look at them. We're not saying that we're gonna fund them anything more than, maybe even not even up to the 100 million, but I know from my viewpoint, I would like to see some of them.
Well, I was gonna ask,
you wanna
this is
say-
just one section though. We still got other,
Well, you have drainage,
You have
which
other
will be on
things.
yeah,
stormwater.
and
You
so
have parks.
to me, this is a great start. But we have so much more to look
Maybe we
at,
can look
and
at
we only
those
have
at the end
77
after
or
we
70
see
million.
these.
Okay.
Well, you have,
That's
well,
fair.
let me ask this, because we went a lot further than I even thought we would get tonight. You quite honestly,
Yeah,
you did
I
a great job listening and going through all this. You have a meeting before the Thanksgiving break next week, that on Thursday evening. I mean, and right now, unless you've got some direction, I don't have any more to present. And I don't think our staff does unless you have questions on this. If you want us to bring back to you, I won't have all the pictures of all of those, but if you want the rest of those streets, we could give you those streets if that's what you want to look at.
I would possibly like to just see a list. I don't need pictures, I don't need this.
You just want a list of the address,
Just
of the
give me
locations.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We could do this, we could do this. If we had all the money in the world, we could do this, we could do that, we could do something else. And,
Let us digest it via
Yeah,
list.
if we can have this information without actually, I don't think at this point, we don't have any desire to go through the presentation. I think, to be fair, we should look at all the other items that
We could get,
possibly funded.
we can, and I'm asking David and David to relay on this.
Just a
and see if
list.
we're wrong, but we could give you a name of a project, the boundaries, the area, what it is, and the dollar amount. I mean, we give you the sheet, we can basically give you these sheets
That'd be great.
That would be,
without any,
Yeah.
Would
unless
there be
you
a
want
map
them on
with
the
it?
map.
Yeah.
Just like we have them here,
all right, that would be a beautiful.
without the photos.
I think that would be beautiful.
Necessarily be prioritized, is that
That'd be
okay?
fine.
That's fine.
We
It's
wouldn't,
basic, yeah,
Alphabetical would work even. I mean, I don't care how they come. I would just like to see what else,
it's got all that already.
yeah, we have that information.
yeah. Yeah,
Does
just
that
something
mean we
that-
don't, does that need to be presented to us at a meeting, or can we just be sent that information?
It's however you wanna do,
Well,
because we can, what you're gonna get
we'll
from
post it,
thumb
it'll be,
drives, we have those. Those are what you have tonight on pictures and the information, you've got your hard copy. We can either download or send you and I'm looking at Jennifer. We're looking to, that we could send you those worksheets, these sheets to you, electronic. Print them, put them in your book, whatever you wanna do. And then it's up to you, I mean.
and that'll be for another discussion. We're probably not gonna discuss it until we go through everything else.
Oh, you're not going to?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Because you have a meeting next week.
Right.
And right, where I was looking at, we would be on this for 2 weeks just going over. Y'all did a great
So we're
job,
ahead of schedule.
Dave. So next week, what do you want to do?
So if we don't have any other information to go over besides the additional information we requested, then I think, stop me if I'm wrong, guys, but maybe we don't have a meeting next week. We digest this information, because we don't have a desire, because this really isn't, the other projects are, to be fair, are not really the priority. We want to look at all the other funding too. To your point, you know, we want to make sure that we're not exceeding kind of what we have in the bucket to spend.
Yeah, we don't wanna get overburdened by
see-
just
Yeah,
all
just-
roads.
I would be happy with a spreadsheet. Project goes from this street to this street.
But I think they already have it in the
Dollar figures.
format.
You already have
If you already have the format,
Yeah,
then
that's-
Bill's
that's-
just,
they're
We
already
could simply
done.
provide the information
I
either
would be
electronically or in hard copy.
I'd be comfortable with electronic.
I'm comfortable with
Yeah,
electronic.
that's Pretty darn easy.
Yeah.
Are you can put it right on this one?
Yeah, that's probably, put it on a thumb drive or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, from my point of view, you can email it to me. If I want to print it, I'll print it.
Now,
Yes.
now keep in mind, I think we should be open. Our city manager's returning to work on Monday. She may have some desire for us to
Oh, yeah, definitely.
look at something else, so keep it on your calendar, because we have to post 72 hours.
Yes.
So we did have to post Monday night?
I normally try to do it Monday, yes.
Yeah, so keep it on your calendar for now. We'll know on Monday if our city manager
I
is
think,
okay with kind of that. I really want to get some
I
direction.
think
from her.
that's fine. I mean, I'm not speaking for her, but, you know, it's your committee, it's your group. If y'all want to take a
We're
break,
open
look it
to
over,
continue
we're
forward,
open.
but we want to have something to digest
Right.
and take a look at. So it's going to be up to her and what she desires when she
And
gets
then
back.
we have,
She's been off for 2 weeks, so
yeah, I
she
think.
may be ready to run.
I think the meeting after Thanksgiving
First week of December.
is, starts on drainage. So what we could do is take 15 minutes or so, and you can do it 2 ways. The first 15 minutes or so of that particular meeting, give us your questions, your comments, your thoughts, or email them. That's probably even better. Just email your comments or concerns, questions you may have, so we can work on that information. And then we come in the drainage meeting, we'll give you that. And then David will start on the drainage side of this program over the next meeting.
I like that idea. very
How
much.
are we with the Open Meetings Act to, as a group, to email information? I want to make sure that we're not.
As long as you're not voting or responding, my information, it's just asking questions.
Okay,
I think where you get a problem is that you contact, again, you need to contact us direct,
okay.
not group. Okay, I think that is that, I think that's.
That is the
rule.
way I have read and signed that
I think
agreement
if,
along
as
the way.
long as you
being on
don't
board.
group and ask a question,
If you've been on a board or
ask your
something.
vote and all that, if you just send us your question direct, and I'll ask y'all to probably just send it to the staff that's on the listing, and especially make sure Jennifer's on that list. She'll be coordinating that. I think you're okay. I'll double check if
Well,
something's
my
different.
understanding of the open meetings from the school side of the thing is, as long as we don't have a quorum, we could go to lunch and talk about it. As soon as we cross a quorum, we're doing business.
That's
And
correct.
that would be an undeclared meeting. So just a handful of
I
us.
think though it's slightly different for city governments.
If you do it electronic and do that, you talk more to, you're open. Okay.
So next meeting, everybody have it on the schedule, anybody can't be here in case. city
I
manager-
have a conflict.
Okay, and then how about the 27th? Oh, the 27th is,
That'd be good.
Thanksgiving.
I am going to be eating ribs,
I will be in Corpus Christi, on the 4th.
not turkey.
Is that the next scheduled?
After, that's the one after Thanksgiving.
All right.
I believe that was drainage.
And then the 11th, I won't be here, so Bob, you'll have the con. I will be, I think I'll be flying to DC, and I'll be in DC on the 10th, so.
Okay.
Okay, so what I gather our instructions are is that we'll check with Donna when she gets back, see if there's a need for the meeting from her behalf. But in y'all's opinion right now, y'all don't plan on meeting next week.
No.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then we'll get you electronic files of the rest of the 70 million or whatever's left on that and get that information to you, all knowing that you won't be looking at it till you review the rest of the project, but we'll get that to you so we don't forget it.
Okay.
And then we'll put it on another
All right,
bump
anybody
out.
else have anything else? With, this time I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make the motion, we adjourn.
And a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign.
Good night.
Good night.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Good meeting.
Awesome, good job, guys.
Yeah.
Really good.
Now we'll be walking down the street.
There's a crack.
Creating community awareness.
And see, I'm on my homeowners association. Did you know this is part concrete and this part gravel?
Dave.